I'll kind of start with me. Just for people who are watching and are unfamiliar, or with any of you guys, right? So I just started playing Final Fantasy and like trying the harder content. I think I'm two ultimates in, all of the savages in Shadowbringers in with a group that did that like all together. Uh, I've been tanking in WoW at a world first level or world top 10 level for like 9 years, basically. I did some outside the raid stuff the past couple raids, but before that, I had done raid leading inside the raid as a tank. And I did all the stuff I've done so far in this game as a tank. I'm also passionate about melee, but I've done, I'd have mained every class in WoW that tanks in the world first race. And that's like kind of my experience with tanking. I've only played Dark Knight and Paladin at a top level, or not at a top level, but like I've played at max level. I've set up the other two at 70. I've gone into Boja and like done the whole 80 rotation and set up my UI for it, and I understand the classes. But the only ones I have any progression experience on are those two. I invited 3 other people to this call, some community members, a lot of you guys know. They all of them are heavily recommended for their takes on tanking. I think all of them do know and play every tank, although I think a few of them have like pretty strong opinions about, or have played, or I guess mained one or others more than others, right? So just kind of go around the table. So Rin, what got you into Final Fantasy? What do you do in this game, and what do you want the chat to know about you?
So I actually got to the end game in Guild Wars 2 when it was fresh, and there wasn't any. So my brother and I were like,
"Yo, true, dude."
Final Fantasy 14. He started playing Paladin, didn't even have a combo finisher while leveling, so he gave up. I kept going. Fell in love with raiding. Was a Dragoon main for a long time, and I became a tank by happenstance because one of my friends lost their tanks and was like, "You want to try out?" Sure. And then in the beginning of Stormblood in the Delta Scape raid tier, I started racing, and that was pretty cool. I got into high-end optimization. I'm like, all right, well, this is pretty sweet. How far can we go? Speedrunning tech, all kinds of.
So you had the typical tank curse. You had the tank. You had a tank quit, and you're like, oh, I guess that'll be me. And then obviously all of us know years later you never get to not do that after you start doing it.
And it's enjoyable in this game. It really is.
Sindalf, dude.
Because I mean, as we all know, Gunbreaker came out in this expansion in Shadowbringers. It's basically 3 DPS in a trench coat.
Jesus. Okay. All right. I figured, yeah.
Basically, like I just like to do a lot of speed running progression
and helping other people
play. I play all 4 tanks. I'll play whatever the fight needs, although I favor Gunbreaker because it's my favorite. And just helping people run and clear content.
All right, cool. Next on the list is Xeno. I've heard other people refer to him as the father of tanks or whatever. Like Xeno was one of the first people in this game to be really big into like tank damage optimization and stuff like that. He's also the guy with the Xeno Bleppers emote, and he's currently a burger. So tell us a little bit about you.
Not a burger today. I played this game since fucking. Well, I played a little bit in 1.0, but yeah, I played since then. Back in the day, they're like the tanking was a lot different back in the day. But TLDR, the best shit in the game was crafted accessories because they provided damage, whereas like nowadays, or like back in the day, like tank accessories just had like vit, but crafted accessories had strength because for whatever reason they put in strength. But I began optimizing like almost immediately when I hit like max level. Yeah, I played the game since 2.0. I played like every tank. I made every tank. My favorite's warrior. I'm a warrior simp.
Okay, so you're fully embracing the warrior simp, or are you like, because yesterday you were like, I'm a tank simp. I'm not a warrior simp. Fuck all you who think I'm a warrior simp.
I just like all right. So it's weird, right? And I'm sure you get this too. But whenever you play a different job or you play a different game, right? People ask you, "Oh my God, did you quit Dark Knight? Yo, did you quit 14? Did you quit WoW?" So whenever I play anything other than Warrior, people ask if something happened to Warrior, like that it got deleted or something. And it's just like, no, bruh, I fucking play every tank, man. Like, so it's just become a meme to me at this point. So I just, I'm a fucking Warrior main, dude. I drank napalm. I smashed bricks on my head. That's just me. So, yeah. But no, I play every tank. I main every tank. I really enjoy tank roll. But my personal favorite is Warrior though.
All right, good. So now we have a personal favorite from Rin being Gunbreaker, Xeno
drinking
being
napalm.
Warrior,
That's what I do.
And then we have Sindalf as well. Current, I think you're tanking currently, right, for TPS? That's your...
Yeah.
I know you were healing at 1.2.
Sindalf,
okay, so
he's a Dark
currently
Knight
tanking,
simp.
and he's known for having very spicy takes. So Rin, or also I wanted to ask Xeno if you had ever tanked in either game too before I move on. Like, have you like any other MMO?
Yeah, I started tanking in a Rift actually. I don't know if any of you guys played that.
Okay, that's OG.
Yeah. So because in that game you had to raid like 20, had 20-man raids like WoW, and I could never get in a group as a DPS. Every group fucking needed tanks. So I was like, okay, fuck it. I guess I'm a tank now. And I just, ever since then, I
think that has to be how everyone started tanking at some point, but
probably.
But yeah. Okay. So Sindalf, I've heard, I'm sure it's out of context. I've heard you say that TBN was so good. It was like a second invuln or something like that, which sounds obviously ridiculous and out of context. But so go ahead and tell us your background,
Sindalf,
as you can tell from my preemptive thing there.
See right there, if Sindalf said that,
Dark Knight guy.
That's how I know you don't have to have a functioning brain to be a world first raider.
Final Fantasy, the first
Sindalf is an amazing player. He's funny as fuck, but he doesn't have a functioning brain. There's no way if he said that.
I mean, the first MMO I ended up
refuse to believe it.
Was Final Fantasy 11, and then when that started to die down, I ended up coming to 14 because Square Enix makes good MMOs. I've been playing since around Reborn, so the beginning of 2.0, and I started doing World Prog usually around Final Coil. Didn't get any results until like late Stormblood, but that's just sort of how that goes.
So you've been doing it for... Are you the person who's been raiding at like a high level the longest, I think, or at least attempting to like go for the highest stuff? I'm trying to get a timeline.
What guild was I in?
Think Xeno might be doing it longer, or at least like he...
When did you start playing Sindalf again? Like
2.0. At the very beginning of 2.0. But you had better results than me for an extremely long time. So, like, baby steps getting there.
Damn, those were bad results for me back in the day.
they were very bad for me.
Yeah, but you know what, Xeno, you're the only one who was willing to actually use those accessories.
Griffin skin, man.
You guys don't even understand where the like I don't know. Like, I have a video about this, but like me in WoW getting to the max level or like the highest level, I applied
Griffin
to a like US top 20 guild back in 2011 from a like world 3000 guild, and I was accepted by accident. So like literally me getting into top end rating was like quite literally an accident. Like they accepted the wrong person, and then I joined and they're like, well, fuck it, I guess we'll just see what happens. So yeah, I definitely know where it comes from like back there being in the I've been in the trenches too a long time ago.
I got accepted into my first, like, I would say decent quality guild after when they planned to kick me immediately because they had no choice. They just weren't sure who to like bring, and they're just like, "Well, we'll bring."
I think it was Legacy he's talking about.
Somehow I ended up being able to keep my spot. So
there you go.
Was that Legacy?
No, that was Encore.
Oh, okay.
They were one of the groups that ended up clearing. Yeah, that was one of the groups that ended up clearing all of Second Coil Savage. But yeah, I've done tanking for every single tier except for Titan. The recent tier with Titan, I ended up playing healer for that because NA has no healers, and basically you're just stuck into that hole when that happens. So did that for a bit, came back to tanking, and in the past I usually played a lot of warrior just because it was historically the most flexible tank there is, but because of the changes in Shadowbringers, I feel like Dark Knight is. And I usually end up playing whichever one is the most brain dead / easiest or most flexible.
Okay, so I do want to kind of talk about the differences between the classes in a bit.
Hot takes.
Also, because every class has a champion in here so far, I will champion Paladin as the like
Paladin
odd man out. I'll just pick the last one.
I
do really like Paladin. I think I liked it a little more when I first started playing because I was just reading tooltips. I was just like, you know, oh man, the idea of cover sounds incredible. The idea of having the option to have clemency sounds incredible.
Cover
And
used to be
clemency
awesome.
specifically in a progression environment is really good.
Well,
but I definitely
used to be a part of
massively
your CD
overrated
kit,
how
actually.
many times you actually interact with something like that in a progression environment. So I've definitely come off the Paladin hype train a little bit, although I do feel like it's still obviously a really good progression tank. And we'll talk about the Endwalker changes in a little bit. Before we talk about the specific Endwalker changes or where the meta is, I kind of wanted to get a little bit of information from you guys about like where tanking came from in this game and where it's going. Because at least again, I didn't play then, but I've heard that tanking used to actually be a bit more involved. Like, right, you had the ability to get crit, so you had like an ability to prevent you from getting crit. It seemed like tanking used to, and also there used to be a bit more like actual like stacking auto attack increase debuffs. They had to taunt swap off and stuff like that. And it seems like they've moved away from that. They wanted tanking to be a little bit more binary. I know I've heard a few of you speak on it, and then Xeno and I almost started talking about how the new tank changes could potentially affect something like that going into the next expansion. Like, is it going to be easier or harder? So let's kind of start with the past. So like where tanking currently is in Shadowbringers and where it came from, and if you think that's a good or bad thing for the game. And any of you can talk about that.
So, I mean, the biggest change from the past is like we don't have tank stance anymore. We used to have it, and that was a conscious decision that affected everything from your mitigation to how much damage you did. And there was a lot of work that a tank had to basically do to like balance that around, especially in a progression environment.
As well as your party.
Yes. Yeah, because we don't have Shadewalker anymore from ninjas. So
No,
there was like
smoke screen, diversion, lucid dreaming, a lot. You could use a bard as a cooldown and cover them because Max, as you might not know, cover used to be awesome. It cost no gauge and gave you 20% mitigation while you used it.
And it worked with hollowed ground or something like that, right? Like
no.
Oh, that never worked.
You could eat somebody else's hit while you hollow ground your own.
Yeah.
Basically, you use someone else as a cooldown, so you get an extra rampart. You just have them take the hit.
That makes sense. But they also didn't have a gap closer, right? So that was probably like a little weird.
True.
Back in the day, the only tank that did was Dark Knight.
So that's one thing I've noticed is I feel like, at least in Shadowbringers, and I don't know how far back in the day is, but it seems like in Shadowbringers to me, after, you know, only starting playing here and setting up all 4 tanks, it seems like they've majorly homogenized the tanking role. I still think the tanks have like their niches, maybe more specifically in their invulnerabilities, but the way they mitigate damage, it's like they all have a 20% and a 30%. They all have, you know, in WoW what you'd consider your active mitigation, like Sheltron, Blackest Night. Obviously, Sheltron Intervention combination, Blackest Night, Nescent Flash with the, I forget the name of the other one, and then obviously Heart of Stone. But they all, it's all like in the same cloth, and they all have like their minor benefits. So how do you all, what does that seem like from people who've been in the community for a long time? Like, what is, right?
Better than Heaven's Ward.
I mean, yeah, it's a consequence of Heaven's Ward because back in the day, when you took a class, like you had Monk, which could give Dragon Kick, which gave intelligence down to the boss. You had Warrior, which would bring Path, which would have damage down.
Your Path was so good.
Paladin could bring physical damage down.
So good.
But because of a lot of the fights being skewed towards magic, you had classes like Paladin that were pretty awful in many fights. Like, if you took a Paladin in Heaven's Ward to certain fights, you were absolutely trolling. There was zero reason to ever take the class. It was just bad. Because
you also couldn't use your active mitigation well because Sheltron was a single next attack and autos could eat it before a buster.
And it did not block magic.
Yeah, man. Like Heaven's Ward was just really bad overall. When people complain about like the class being homogenized or whatever, it's just very obvious they didn't play back in 3.x. And in the latest live letter, they pointed out that they're never going back there, which is, it's one of those things where it's good. It's like definitely good for the game. It's definitely good for the player base, but it's bad for people that like to, I guess, optimize and play it like somewhat of a higher level, because some jobs were just severely underpowered. Like Monk was super bad. Paladin was super bad.
The Dragoons were one shot by AoE.
Yeah. It's like, there's a reason why that they shied away from that. There was one point in time where Yoshi literally said that Paladins would never block magic. That's another thing too, is Paladins used to not.
Is that like a lore? Is that like a lore reason? Like they wanted?
I have no fucking idea.
It's so hard to mix lore and game design. Like, you know what I mean? Like class balance.
Yeah, I don't know, because in other Final Fantasies you could block magic too. So I don't know why paladins weren't able to block magic, but I mean, I'm not really a lore guy, but I just know, like, you know, in like 6 and stuff, you can fucking block magic. But anyway, yeah, like 3.x was super bad for that. It was really rough. You literally had tanks wearing like melee accessories because like melee accessories and like crafted gear because the tank accessories were so garbage. You never wore like tank accessories ever.
We toggled between vit pots and strength pots for a little while.
Oh yeah, that was a thing.
Yeah, when they actually gave us the scaling, and then one day they said, we want you to choose between survivability and damage, and 100% of the community said damage.
Yep.
Yeah, there was. I forgot there was that point when like they couldn't balance tanking and like accessories, so they tried putting like balancing you off of vit. Then I think they tried to do something with like vit and strength.
What was like 45% or something?
Yeah, it was in Midas. Yeah, that's when they made the strength and vit change. So basically, it was like, so in Gordius, a tank's damage scaled off of strength. And then they were like, well, everyone's fucking wearing strength accessories. No one wears vit.
Yeah.
And so they changed it to where you gain like 0.45 of a main stat in vit and 0.45 of a main stat in strength. And they put like strength on the vit accessories. So then you finally wore them or something like that. But then I guess because of power creep or something, because like a tank's strength stacked with their vit, but also their HP was getting like ridiculous too, because I guess they forgot that if they're like tanks didn't wear vit accessories for so long, I guess they just forgot that when they put on vit accessories, they're going to have more HP. So tanks were doing like what? More than double damage than
maybe like a ninja would beat them for a little bit, or a summoner. Well, that was also warriors sacrificed all their defensives to gain fell cleaves for a little while, right?
Yeah.
Or wire warrior actually did just like a ton of damage. It was actually kind of disgusting.
Yeah,
but I also remember.
Or sorry, go ahead.
I also remember like with this whole HP thing, there was a point in Stormblood where at I think the very beginning, when a tank going full damage would have almost as much HP as a DPS player.
Yes.
And it was just
right at the beginning. Ridiculous. You go into Susano, and the reason why was because they changed the way our gear would scale, but they allowed us to still use Alexandrian gear, which was a gain. So you just didn't use the new stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
You were using like level 60 accessories at level 70 because it had more strength on it.
See, that's funny, because that's something that a lot of WoW players have actually complained about, that back in the someone said earlier, every time take a drink every time they say back in the day, but back in the day in WoW there was you would sometimes use things you got at the beginning of the expansion all the way through because they were so broken. And that's actually something that a lot of players miss now, because every time a new like season or raid comes out in WoW, you basically replace everything that you have with new stuff. And players are like, man, I kind of wish when there was that like random thing you kept from a previous zone. So like that's kind of, I guess that's more of a loot conversation, but at least that's really interesting, that because the WoW players have had the opposite interaction with that basically.
Oh, yeah, someone in my chat brought up something really awesome too. Okay, that one warrior ability, raw intuition. Yeah. So what raw intuition used to be was that it would parry every attack that you receive from the front, but if you received a hit from the side or from the back, it would automatically crit you. However,
wait, what?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so you'd parry everything in front, but if you got hit from the side or the back, you'd get automatically crit. However, the way they coded it, they also meant healing too. So you would have a healer just stand behind you and just heal, and they'd crit every single heal. So you could like guarantee like crit spread allos and stuff.
It was so bad.
What?
Yeah.
They fixed that.
Fixed it.
Oh, they fixed that shit. Yeah, but
yeah.
It was funny when it lasted.
When was all this? Because I feel like in my experience in Shadowbringers, I feel like there's been very, very few. Although keep in mind, a lot of us are playing during this super long downtime, so like it's potential there were weird things throughout the expansion that just got fixed and we know nothing about.
No,
this expansion's been pretty good, I think.
Yeah, it seems that way. It seems like things maybe they finally hit their stride where like everything started making sense. and they did that. But I really think it's because of those design decisions where classes are really, really, you know, it's easy for them to create things that work for every class because they all like kind of, at least all the tanks mitigated pretty similarly. Like in WoW, you mentioned that Pallies didn't used to be able to block magic abilities. In WoW, there's a class called Warrior, but this is like part of the problem they have with balancing, where like their warriors in that game shield block, and they have the best physical mitigation of any tank by far, at least for a few expansions. And but if there was like a boss with a lot of external magic damage to the raid or magic busters, warriors were really, really like frail. But that was like kind of how the meta worked. It's like some classes could be better for others. There were some tanks that were majorly better at magic and some that are majorly better at other things. But the way that they, at least in Shadowbringers, that they've designed it is like, I mean, what, the Dark Knight are considered like the best magic tank, but only because of the slight optimization that they have. Like Dark Mind's really good, but like Dark Mind, and because they have an absorb rather than, you know, some of the way the other things work, I guess. But like it's much closer in that way. The tanks are not as uniquely different in this game than they are in WoW. Is that a good thing or bad thing? Like, would you rather see warriors be like, they have less cooldowns in general, but they have so much health healing that like if played properly, they don't even need external healing, but it's like super dangerous, right? Whereas
Heaven's Ward.
Right? Yeah, that
awesome.
was
It was
yeah,
awesome,
that was
but
Heaven's Ward. Like Heaven's Ward was like well, okay, it wasn't an entirely different game, but it was a very different game. Like it was pretty different back in Heaven's Ward.
It seemed like it was really not to interrupt, but like it seemed like it was really like WoW is now. Because it seemed like they were very different. And kinda, like you mentioned the Paladin debuffs, right? Where like Paladin gave a different debuff and some other class gave another debuff. That's exactly how WoW is now, and it's a problem.
Yeah, right? They want to stray from so Heaven's Ward was all about bringing a specific comp. And like Sindalf mentioned earlier, like Paladins were so shit. Like it was, you were literally griefing on a Paladin. Like if you brought a Paladin or a Monk, you were griefing, because everything that you needed from like Paladin and Monk, like Dark Knight could just do better. Because Dark Knight also had like an int down debuff, and it also like Monk couldn't control their aggro. That was another thing too.
Had an extra minute on its TP rotation.
Yeah.
Paladin was out in 2 minutes 30 seconds, if I remember right, and Dark Knight I think was 3:30. So it's like,
yeah,
once again, why take Paladin? It's less damage as well.
Yeah, like less damage, plus they needed more TP. It was like
a resource on physical GCDs back then.
Yeah, which was, oh man, dude, Dark Knight Warrior was so good back in the day.
what procced off of parries on Dark Knight back then?
That was Reprisal.
Yeah, Reprisal and low blow.
It would give.
I regret not playing it then.
So is Passage of Arms a Shadowbringer ability?
Stormblood.
So in Stormblood, you're saying that Dark Knights did not have Dark Missionary, meaning their only raid mitt was Reprisal, and then Paladins had Divine Veil and Passage of Arms, and they were dog shit. That
but Dark Knight got TBN.
It depended on the fight, actually.
It did depend on the fight.
Yeah, it depended on the fight. Like
super good to have a TBN.
Like actually, so. Okay, you mentioned earlier like the Dark Knight was magic tank. I actually think Dark Knight is just the anti-physical tank. And there's a difference. I don't think Dark Knight is the magic tank because it does have Dark Mind, yes, but it can be a little bit of a debate because like Warrior, they can mitigate magic just as well. And they don't have a damage specific cooldown. It used to be, the game used to have more damage specific cooldowns or damage type specific, and I don't really agree with that.
Raw Intuition was physical, wasn't it?
Yeah, Raw Intuition was just physical. It wasn't all damage. My point here is that they want to shy away from bringing a specific comp. They want every job to be able to clear and not be excluded, because back in the day, like that's one, like what I mentioned earlier about like the homogenization and shit. People complain about that. Those people didn't know how bad it, like they just don't know how bad it was back in the day. Like if you played a Paladin back in the day, your job was fucking garbage. If you played a Monk, your job was fucking garbage. And there would be parties that would like purposely exclude like Paladins and Monks. I know because I made some of those parties. I wasn't fucking grouping with that. Fuck that. That's just griefing. It's fucking bad. Get out of my party.
Astra was kicked out for half an expansion too, wasn't it?
Yes, Caster was also bad.
When
Caster
they made
was
hypercharge 1% to 2% and everybody just hard locked Machinist.
yeah, back in the day, actually, well, back in Heaven's Ward, like range damage dealers were absurd. They like dealt more damage than melee.
They got more.
That's true.
They got a ton of buffs. Plus, Dragoon would buff them, and with that all combined with a ninja, you just did a ton of damage. Like you
But that was it. You just brought that comp and nothing else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
We had a machine. It was kind of disgusting because like I remember my group had a very experienced black mage. We take him and he's fully geared, and we look at our DPS and our time. Then he go into his undergeared machinist and does more damage, and it's like, why do we take this godforsaken class black mage? Like it was so bad, this imbalance, that it's not just like the like high-end community saying you can't play this class because it's bad. Like it would bleed into the casual community's party finder, all of that.
Well, it happens all the time, whether you want it or not. Like that's kind of the case it is in WoW. And WoW is still kind of in that Heaven's Word Stormblood situation where there are so many different variables involved that they've created an impossible problem to tune exactly what they want, right? Like just they have so many more damage types, the amount of types of damage you can do, single target, 2 target, 3 target, 5 target, covenants, soulbinds, conduits, like legendaries, just so many variables that interact with each class or job in this game differently. And there's also double the jobs, right? To where they've had a big issue with that. But I actually think that that's actually serviced this game really well, because one thing we're going to talk about is like kind of the state of tanks in Endwalker eventually. But it's important to note that a lot like Shadowbringers, I don't think this game is designed currently and in the future to ever be a situation where anyone could say to someone like that class is just not viable. I mean, that's just like objectively not true in this expansion. You could clear any content with any class.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about you know, the best groups in the world, the best players in the world, what they're going to be thinking about that differentiates, what creates a comp or a meta. But that's while doing an important disclaimer that you know, you can literally run anything week 1 and it's fine, right? So
people told Xeno he couldn't clear Shiva with Warrior.
Oh yeah, dude, that was rough. But...
There you were skipping the Enrage cast, right? Like, well, not seeing the whole thing.
So was this more of a thing? I actually wanted to talk about when there was that notion in the game that you couldn't play this, because it sounded like in your game there were some classes that were actually griefing. Where in WoW, it's actually, that's sometimes a perception,
mathematically impossible.
I've noticed that that's happened more in the past couple of years. And I don't know if Final Fantasy's been out long enough to experience
Titan
the shift.
too.
But at least in like 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014 in WoW, there was 2015 even, there was never a thought of, oh man, wait, we have a feral druid in our guild. Wait, we should recruit this instead. That did not exist. Like at all. And nowadays it's like, oh wait, what did the Race World First guilds run? Which by the way, we were bringing those classes to solve a completely different issue than the one that these groups face, right? Like it's a damage check on a certain mob that is no longer relevant, or a certain phase that is no longer relevant due to nerfs or increase in gear, right? And then, but their thing is still stuck on what we initially ran. Does that happen in Final Fantasy at all, even with the classes being a lot closer to each other? Even currently?
Yeah, so people will look at first. I mean, people are gonna look at comps and strats, right? We did the jankiest shit to get the kill, but people are gonna be like, it must be the best because you did it. And that is something that I think trickles down to maybe like the more casual end who just want to look up a guide and look at what other people did. But mostly people will just play what they want. It comes down to proficiency. If you could play Warrior than playing a shit Dark Knight, you're just gonna play Warrior because you'll do better.
Yep.
Yeah,
Definitely.
the problem with people that like think that way is like so look at like the UCOB world first. They added Dark Knight and Paladin when it was like
unheard of.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah, so basically Dark Knight at level 70 doesn't have like a raid buff, and its damage is like, you know, I mean, the balance in Stormblood was I mean, pretty decent. I mean, I think it's better now. But my point being is that when there was a Dark Knight Paladin that cleared first, it was like a big deal, right? Because they didn't have like a raid buff and stuff. And Warrior did, it had Shake. And his reason for playing Dark Knight was literally just because he wanted to. Or that person's, well, I mean, I guess I don't have the actual article on hand, but Yeah, from what I remember.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Yeah, it was just literally because he wanted to. And that really means a lot to me, because that means that like you don't have to have the absolute best comp on paper to do the fights in this game. So to me, I value comfort a lot higher than some people. And going back to like the people who just like watch guides or watch what like the world first does, a lot of times they'll see a strat or they'll see a comp and they actually won't understand why they're doing that strat or why they have that comp.
That's true.
They will just mimic it without actually having the understanding. And that is the most important, the understanding of why you're bringing what you're bringing, like why you're doing what you're doing. They just think that if they have that strat or they have those jobs, everything else will just fall in place.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God. You are, this is probably the thing I dislike the most about anything my viewers do. And I apologize if anyone here, if I'm speaking about them right now, but I will hear from guild masters that like some guild masters in the past have not liked me because people in their guild will be like, they won't provide any evidence or a real argument. They'll just say like, oh, well, Limit Max doesn't do that strat, so why are you doing it? You know, like, I mean, just like totally reasonable to do something else, which by the way, a lot of the stuff I do early is not the best thing to do later into a patch. And they won't be able to make the argument. They'll just say, well, I said this, so that's the way you should do it. I hate that line of thinking. Your group, a different strat, could be completely better than someone else's. Like if you guys remember when we were doing Titan, like our healers were struggling in the last phase. So we came up with, we didn't end up using it, but like a ridiculous second merry-go-round strat to just make it easier for healers. And it was a bad strat, but it could have been good for specifically our group at that moment. So like you can make all kinds of decisions like that. And I think that's something that and just to kind of piggyback around on all of this, I don't know if it's about our games as much as it is just 2021. Everyone in 2021 in gaming just wants to play a game and look up a tier list, and that's it. They don't care about finding out why things are the way they are. They just want to know what it is. And that is really bad for at least MMOs because there's usually a lot more intricate decision making that goes into that. But at least in Shadowbringer's defense, they've actually done a good job where it's actually true that like you could legitimately run any tank all the time. And even in World First, what we do as a World First guild is I try to put my best players on their best class as much as possible, unless it just does not allow it with the current raid. Playing what you're the most comfortable with is better just 99 out of 100 times, even if you perceive something to be slightly better.
Do you also follow the baseline logic of, and this is something we do in progression, is if we know somebody is weak at a mechanic and we have the option to put somebody who's really strong at that mechanic in charge of that for that time, it might not be the most optimal, but it's going to get our clear faster.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely, everybody.
And people will see that. Like Echo just did E6, right? And they sacked the tethers at the end of Ifrit and Gruta. And if imagine if every group just thought you had to do that, nobody learned it. Understanding why you're doing what you're doing is there's a lot of value.
Yeah, that's the strat in Party Finder.
Wait,
you just sack that fucking DPS,
world,
dude.
Wait.
They did the enumerations, and then when the DPS gets a tether, they just bye. See ya, nerd.
You just don't grab the tethers. Just see ya, unlucky DPS.
Yeah, I guess that is something you can do.
They knew they were ahead, so
yeah, I mean they die. Yeah, like you have
to understand WoW brain is exactly like WoW is so used to. Do you guys know how in Ultimates and Savage, I feel like everyone is kind of involved in every mechanic in a way. There's very few times you could have like, you know, your physical range who's good with movement go do a certain mechanic. It's usually like everyone's involved kind of thing. Where in Ultimates, in Ultimates there's much more like kind of baiting involved where you can have like certain people do it. And I feel like in WoW, with 20 people, a lot of the mechanics are much more like Ultimate mechanics in that way, like the way I just described, to where you can have specific people do them, and you sack stuff all the time. If it means one person has to die, you use a res, and it's a super hard mechanic, never have to learn it, you easy do that. So we did the same thing. The first time we saw Hands of Flame or whatever it is, even in P2, before the bosses combined, we're like, let's just see if we never have to learn that. Let's see if those deaths never actually matter for killing it at the end. You know, but we ended up doing it because it was so easy there. But like that's just the way we're like designed to think because of our game.
I mean that makes sense. I when I was waiting for Shadowbringers, I actually went back because I played through Cataclysm and then I left because Final Fantasy, and then I came back and played for Uldir, and I was playing both a Vengeance Demon Hunter and a Brewmaster, and even though I liked Vengeance more, Brewmaster just felt very comfortable.
I hated Consecrator and Party
Paladin,
Finder. I always made them do
You'll
it.
see a lot of cheese mechanics
Fuck
with
'em.
tank involved.
I always made
Paladin
'em do
did
it,
something,
dude.
and I'm sure Xeno that you've seen this a lot, and Sindalf if you remember too. 011 Savage, you talked about Fizz range,
So
Max
bad.
having all the mobility in the world, right? Well, they couldn't fucking think for themselves, and they needed Paladins to do a mechanic for them. And all you had to do was go to the outside of the arena and walk around in a circle. And they were like, "Nah, we're just gonna have a Paladin stand away and use hollow ground to just stand there."
I
Yeah.
Yeah,
remember
fuck that, man. I made him do it. I even clipped myself doing it, and I would link it in the party chat. I'd say, "Hey, you're doing this, or I can leave. It's fine. I don't care. I'm not doing that shit."
Maybe
ridiculous.
one of my maybe
I got
one
my
of my
bard from that
weaknesses-
tier in chat right now, and he's like, "Come on, dude, I'm right here."
Nah, fuck that.
Maybe one of my weaknesses in Prague is that I don't do that, but ugh.
Here's a question I want to ask you guys before we go into Endwalker, specifically about the Shadowbringers design. Do you guys think that all the tanks should do the exact number of damage? And before, to kind of clarify, I think the way it is right now with Gunbreaker, I think pulling out a little bit ahead. I was seeing some like higher optimization Paladin uptime stuff being pretty good as well, but like I feel like Gunbreaker should be slightly ahead of every other tank because it seems like that's that class's bit where you play Gunbreaker to add some more. You might play like Warrior Paladin or Dark Knight Paladin or something for progression, but then you make the Gunbreaker swap when you just really need to meet the enrage, or like Warrior's such a good option in general, but also, this fight, a shorter invuln like E10S, like it allows you to get an extra use. No other tank can invuln 1 and 3, right? Like it seems like every tank kind of has, even though they're all viable, they all have like a carved out niche on why you would bring them in progression. So how do you guys feel about the damage argument? Because I feel like some tanks that have more to offer, if they do the same damage, if a Paladin has a 16-second ranged phase in Endwalker and an extra raid cooldown, they have a shitty long invuln for most things. It can be really good and not shitty for some of them, but how can they do the same damage as someone who has less than that? Does that make sense? Like the red mage versus other casters argument. Red mage should never do the same damage as a black mage, right? Like what the fuck is that? Like the same RDPS. That would make no sense. Like you just bring one forever, right? So like what do you guys think about that?
I think tank damage overall is pretty close.
Within like a % or 2, right?
Yeah. I actually think Dark Knight should deal the highest damage, not Gunbreaker.
That's true.
Dark Knight is the shittiest CDs, man.
The shittiest CDs,
yeah.
And it also has like more pooling involved for correct like 1 minute burst windows, right? I feel like it has a bit more.
But it's
Dark Knight
really easy to use though.
Raid buffs right now, like it's a speedrun meta, but only in the hands of the right players. At the standard baseline, they're going to do.
No, I broke it, dude.
They come out matching Paladin,
breaking the
just and
tension,
Gunbreaker, and a speed. But you have so many drawbacks, right? Like Xeno's touch. I mean, I don't think it's a surprise. TBN kind of sucks for its drawbacks as well as Living Dead. Like, what the fuck is that? Why do they have those?
Well, also like warrior damage right now is pretty good. You also have to look at how much work you put into a job. So like I progged last tier on Gunbreaker and I fucking hated that shit. That shit was awful,
Really?
man. I I think I performed pretty well. I just do not like hitting ammo combo every 30 seconds during a fucking 12-hour raid day. That's just me personally. Other people can handle it, but I just did not like it personally.
You appreciate your joints and hands and.
Yes, but one of like Warrior's strengths though is that it has a ridiculous amount of CDs and it can tank in like different ways, so it can heal itself. Also has, well, I guess if you want to count Shank, but it can heal itself and also mitigate. Also has the shortest invuln. I don't think Warrior's the best, like in every situation. I think all the tanks are pretty close. It's gonna come down to the fight. But as far as Gunbreaker's like damage, I don't know, this is just how I look at tanks, but I look at their defensive abilities. And in my opinion, since Living Dead is the worst, I feel like the Dark Knight, you not only have the worst invuln, well, in my opinion, but you also have a lot of buttons to hit too. And sometimes you have a lot of fucking buttons, man. Like in your, I mean, none of them are forced, like continuation, but you know, like sometimes they might feel forced, so you don't overcap. But And when I say like highest damage, I don't mean by like 10% or anything. I just mean I could see a world where if you swap, like, you know, let's say you take Gunbreaker's current damage, which is what, like 1% higher or something, or 2% or something, and you just put Dark Knight there, I could see that happening. I'm not like, do I think it should? I think tank damage is fine right now. I think it's pretty balanced. I think that's the goal, is to keep it balanced. And I mean, obviously nothing's going to be perfect. I can say though, that I don't really agree with Paladin's damage being higher, just because they have 2 raid buffs and they also have a ranged phase. I think that is like just slightly unfair.
Yeah, absolutely. Like look at like the way that some classes interact. Like one of the reasons why triple ranged 1 melee DPS comps are so prevalent, outside of obviously other reasons, is because it's you don't care as much about uptime strats when you only have 1 melee. Maybe that 1 melee is a ninja that's actually pretty good with downtime or having to move away. And that's like this in tank
DPS should
form, right?
absolutely
Like
be balanced.
there's just things you care less about with downtime if paladins just have, 16 seconds out of every minute next patch where they can be doing whatever the fuck, right? There has to be a drawback to that, right?
Their drawback is that if you drop their combo, it sucks, but I think that's just more clunky than anything, because they get completely derailed if they fuck up.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
I don't think that's good design.
Yeah.
So, what you said, Xeno, earlier about how, like, Dark Knight has a lot of buttons to press and all of that fun stuff. So it does, actually. So, and it is kind of a downside to a lot of people who want to play the class. Who's like, oh, this is the high APM class, which it only is during your burst window. Outside of it, it is very snooze fest. But
yeah,
I think what makes at least Dark Knight a very ideal class, to me anyway, is it doesn't have urgency in your buttons. So you take a class like Gunbreaker and you going to your Gnashing Fang combo, you have to press continuation right there and then for the most part.
oh yeah,
You don't really have a choice. Dark Knight, on the other hand, you have different choices that you actually can make there. You can lose some party synergy to make everything else easier for you and just put it outside of party synergy. Or if you have the fun part of saying, I'm probably going to die up here, or you are going to take a damage down, you can dump your load on the boss right before like all that happens, because the class has flexibility. You don't have to do things right then and there. You can move and shift it around. And that freedom that other tanks don't always have is really, really like powerful in terms of like learning a fight, clearing a fight.
yeah. I like Dark Knight's off GCDs are different than Gunbreaker. Like I really do not like continuation. I think it is a horrible fucking design. I think that designing an off GCD to be forced and restrictive on a tank that, on a job that is meant to pop defensive cooldowns and move the fucking boss, I think that's bad design. I think that's shit. It's not busy. Like Gunbreaker is not busy. It's restrictive. It's forced. Like Dark Knight is busy. Yeah, sure. But like you mentioned, you can like shift your stuff around. So if you know something is going to come up, you can like maybe burn 1 extra edge or something so that you have an off GCD slot that you need. But a lot of times on Gunbreaker, like unless you like fucking pre-pop the shit out of it, you can't do that.
You know, one thing I tell tanks that are learning is that they have to be proactive about thinking about the timeline, because it really benefits you. And I think, I'm sure you'd agree, right? Gunbreaker is probably the one that needs the most knowledge.
Yes,
ahead
absolutely.
Of time. And that both works as a strength and a weakness. So I don't care for continuation, but I like Gnashing Fang itself because it gives me a mental timer every 30 seconds for a mechanic coming up. So if I remember,
I like Gnashing Fang.
That fucking sucked last pull. I had to pop.
I just don't like the continuations.
I know as I'm approaching it that I need to get my mitt ready. So in that essence, I guess it helps, but that's just like a clunky workaround, right? Where you're interacting with it in the way that it works. I just like Gunbreaker because it is a little busy, but it's also, I mean, you said it's restrictive. It does also have a lot of shit to press. But in general, it could be so versatile with its opener, which the other tanks don't really do. And you could change what you're doing for the rest of the fight based on that. That's what I like. But touching on what you were saying, Max, with progression, right? You're saying Clemency looks like it could be strong, but not really. In the first few floors, it's really viable. Like For example, let's take the Eden's Verse tier.
What would I do with
progged Vermilion
continuation
as a
if you could
paladin
change
because
it?
I knew we'd have to either disengage or get hit by a lot of AoEs.
Watch my video. I'm
So I
actually about
went
to talk
paladin for that
about it.
fight, so we could have the extra cooldowns.
Well, I don't want to interrupt
And then
anybody.
on Ifrit and Garuda, I was like, well, I want consistent damage, and you can usually get by the second floor with a couple of deaths. And Warrior, if you die, you just get back up, you keep going. They do consistent damage. So I'm like, all right, go Warrior. Third fight was Magic, so I went Dark Knight. And then the last fight, like you said, Gunbreaker does a lot of damage, so I pulled out Gunbreaker. And they all have that little niche, but ultimately, I mean, the difference is a few and far between.
Yeah, I mean, like when you're actually doing it, so like when I had a super hard on for Paladin, I started playing it. I think I played Paladin for E6S all the way through E10, played Dark Knight on E11, and then I played Paladin on did I play Paladin on E12? I think I did. But yeah, so I played a lot of Paladin. Of all those fights I played it on, it was blind progression. It took a while. Like we were on them for a while. There was two fights, two situations where I was a Paladin and not another tank, and I was able to keep myself and the other tank alive for literally minutes at a time to see a bunch more mechanics ahead of time.
Clemency's great, and Hologround's great for being able to just get a timeline. But once you have that timeline,
yeah. But the thing is like even those timelines, what's the real benefit of seeing minutes past when really you're working on the thing 30 seconds in front of you? Can almost be an overload of information. It's like it's nice to see it, but it's a little overrated in like what it actually means and what you have to do, unless you have to like change your major positioning. And also, like I said, in that amount of time, like it's obviously good. I think it's actually one of its best uses is on an early floor boss. Healing the raid while the only person who's up to res is a healer and they're currently raising, and you can heal everyone while they do that, right? Just like throw around clemency. So like that is like major, because you will not wipe to damage by clemencying on a fight like that if you throw your whole mana bar into it. If you skip a whole magic phase, you'll still kill the boss most likely. So like it's actually useful for that. I'm just saying I had such a hard on for it because chat was like, my chat was initially like very party finder parse party centric, and they were just like literally telling me not to bind clemency because it's a spell. It's a spell that doesn't do damage.
Nerfed, and all the other tanks are getting heals except for Dark Knight. But it's good. I can tell you from a healer standpoint,
you feel so bad.
So bad because you can map.
Dark Knights is crying right now, dude.
After doing White Mage for a little bit, getting to see another 2 minutes and knowing that I have to like use a Temperance or Silent earlier, or I won't have it for the mechanic that'll fuck us, is nice. But I mean, you could all just survive long enough to see that anyway.
A lot of players are not very good at mapping things out to a timeline.
No.
I know that's
offensive and defensive.
Yeah, I know I'm very bad at that, even though I play tank. As a tank, you kind of need to know 2 minutes ahead to really get a good idea of what you're doing. You need to know like your longest cooldown besides your invuln. But like when you take the paladin, and you're like taking it, deciding, oh, am I going to take it for the heals? I mean, you're taking it for pretty much learning purposes. You really don't do much healing like that in a clear unless you really find a good spot for it. So it's mainly there to get you through learning where your damage doesn't matter. And in a lot of those fights, it's the early ones because you can clear it with some unoptimal damage. Whereas in the final fights, you want damage. So you take something like Gunbreaker and you're optimizing throughout the whole day until you actually get ready to kill it.
I agree with all that. I something that I kind of started bringing up with Xeno the other day is how invulns actually interact. So obviously they've tried while a lot of a tank's defensive toolkit is very similar to others, they have made their invulns massively different, right? You have like Home Gang, you go to 1, but it's like on a super short cooldown, super insane. Living Dead's like 5 minutes or something, right? And that you have to like heal out of it. Super Belied is like what, 6 or 7 or something like that, but it is a true invuln. It's like an actual invuln can invuln debuffs. And then Hallowed Ground is like 7 or 8 minutes. It's one of those two. But like each one, it's like the ones that are longer, like it makes sense because like it's an actual true invuln. But the thing is, like the Super Belied, you have to heal up anyway. It's the same healing requirement as Warrior, and in so many cases you don't get a debuff, right? Living Dead similar, and then the Hallowed Ground is obviously the best overall. It just in terms of like what it does, it's just that it's so long that like is it really twice as good as Home Gang in a lot of fights? I've thought a lot about how that's really how they've decided to differentiate the tanks. But the question I want to ask you all I guess just some general thoughts about the invulns compared to the different classes. If you think some specifically need to be buffed or nerfed, especially with like home gang being 10 seconds and Endwalker. But also a side question: do you guys think tanking would potentially play better in this game if there were no invulnerabilities? So rather than most tank mechanics being solved by kitchen sinking one thing and invulning the next, what if it was, you had to be much more careful about where you were actually using your mitt to be able to get through everything, and you didn't always have those, like, basically those two decisions? So just anything about the topic that.
Well, I think the whole invuln everything, well, invuln and then like kitchen sink everything. I think that could be solved by actually putting more damage in a fight in smaller like chunks. Like go pull turn 9 from A Realm Reborn. That boss will destroy you in like the first 20 seconds. And
Or T, the first 2 phases. They make you
yeah,
stretch.
Yeah, just like cleaves in general.
like just more of that would be very good for adding like some variety into the tank mitigation. And then you wouldn't really even need to change the invulns too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they added more, so like, yeah, back in A Realm Reborn and Heaven's Ward, there was actually like higher damage on the tanks via like cleaves and just like untelegraphed shit. Like Living Liquid will do Fluid Swing, which is a cleave. It just does a massive fuck ton of damage, and like Twintania does Plummet. I don't think I think that removing invulns, I don't know if it'd be bad, but I think a better way to do it would make more damage, like more incoming damage, and also if invulns are a concern, just make the abilities go through invuln, or make some abilities.
Which some things have done.
So like a good example is at the end of E8. Right? Like you stack one of those Morna Fas and then you just fucking invuln the other two. Well, what if Morna Fa went through invuln? Oh shit. Well, like now we have to do some weird, like now we have to like do a party stack and then maybe one of the tanks.
Then a tank soak.
Yeah, you have to do a tank soak where they pop all their cool. So you have to do like maybe like party stack and then tank soak into party stack or something like that, instead of just like
Golden Bahamut, right? Sort of. Except without the invulns.
No, I mean, I completely agree. I think there should just be more of that. Like, I can tell you honestly, like the amount of times me progressing, albeit new to the game, 1 through 12, the amount of times I actually saved Rampart specifically for an auto attack string, I just didn't do it. There were probably multiple fights where I could have reduced the amount of times that someone healed me, but I always wanted to have either the kitchen sink or 1 or 2 available to prepare, basically to solve a mistake. That's actually how cooldown management in WoW works. You could literally do a raid fight and never hit your shield wall for a whole night, but you're saving your shield wall in case something goes wrong, and knowing that you can live and not have healers do any less DPS to you by just playing your character correctly. So that was kind of the mentality I went at with it. Now, that would have totally changed if the boss's auto attacks hit hard enough where I definitely needed to have like, man, I really feel like I'm fucking our healers here by not having Rampart up for the last 20 seconds, rather than just like, oh, it's the difference between one healer global or not kind of thing. Like an actual, like, I'm in risk of death from this boss meleeing me, right? There's very few scenarios on those bosses where you actually feel that. Shiva's one of them, right? And yeah, I would agree with that. Just more lethal auto attacks for tanks, and also give healers adequate tools to be able to deal with that as well, right? So that's not like an annoying thing that healers have to deal with now.
Yeah, like a lot of damage in this game, you can heal with off GCDs and not even cast the heal, like as far as just auto attacks. Like auto attacks in some fights, they hit like really hard. Like in phase 2, like Brute Justice really fucks the tank up, especially when you're trying to grab a mine and shit. You can have an easy death there. But like in a lot of fights, the auto attacks are just fluff. It's like you literally heal those up with just regens and like off GCDs, and you can use like a Rampart or something. You don't really need much to live through a lot of auto attacks. I mean, obviously there's always going to be like, a case where the party's, like there's a healer dead or something, but that's like, that's kind of different. But there's not very many fights where the auto attacks deal like a tremendous amount of damage, or that the boss actually does like a cleave anymore. And from actually, I was there was a recent interview. Arthur's was translating it last night. I was watching his stream, and apparently, so back when Shadowbringers came out, people were like, "Oh man, we get Raw Intuition, Heart of Stone, you know, TBN got better, and we have Sheltron. Man, tanks are gonna get fucking destroyed." Well, tanks didn't get fucking destroyed. As a matter of fact, it's like less now, and the article was saying that the damage is actually going to stay the same. And the reason why the like Bloodwetting, Holy Sheltron, the reason why they have that clause is purely for people that do not plan out their CDs and they see a cast bar and they react to it immediately. So that's why you get such a huge bonus in the first 4 seconds.
So
we catering to me.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked. We were kind of talking about this the other night because I was asking that same question. I was like, dude, they're giving tanks so many more tools. Like look at the Sheltron and intervention change, right? Like that is like massive buff from what those buttons currently are. And it's like that to me, I was like, man, they're really gonna like make tanking interesting. And then Xeno was pretty quick to be like, yeah, it seemed like that multiple times in the past, and it's definitely just led to things staying the same and the new cool buttons making them easier.
Yeah, like there might be, well, I mean, obviously I don't know because, you know, Endwalker's not out yet, but based on Shadowbringer's like timeline anyway, the damage is probably going to stay the same, except for it's going to be easier to heal because tanks now have these super ridiculous fucking cooldowns and healers are like more powerful too. That would be my guess. I mean, obviously that could not be the case, but that's my guess just based on how Shadowbringers were because, man, we went from, you know, Stormblood to Shadowbringers, and tanks got all these extra CDs, like Raw Intuition changed to 25 seconds. You know, Gunbreaker has Heart of Stone. You know, so we have all these extra tank CDs, and people thought they were like, man, tanks are gonna get fucked up, and I just was like, I don't know, man. I think they're just making the game easier, dude. I got a feeling, man.
I think the tank community wants that, right? Like, the tank community wants
to take
tanking
more
to be more difficult. Yeah.
Sure. You run into situations, you know, where you're just sitting on equilibrium because you're at max HP and you got nothing to fucking use it on.
Yes.
Like Warrior was used for healing and it doesn't really heal now because you don't have to. So you're like, all right, well, whatever. So that's kind of why the community mentality was like, well, we don't really need a Warrior because what are they gonna do? And their damage was low enough that it was like, we'll just bring Gunbreaker Paladin. I mean, that's we'll see. It's also worth noting because fucking I don't know if people have even thought of this, but like when we talked about like getting a lot of damage from the A ranks at the media tour, they were level 90 and we were wearing 89 gear, so we're not even like at an appropriate item level. So don't take that as us taking a lot of fucking damage because it's probably not going to happen.
Absolutely, yeah. I also think that potency are things that can be shifted really close to launch, right? Like, didn't that happen in Shadowbringers where like people did potency calculations for Gunbreaker leading up to the expansion, and they're like, oh, this class is going to do no damage. Then like, you know, now we know there can be just like 15% aura buffs applied to a job, and then there's no way to data mine it. So you just have to wait till it comes out.
Yeah. Like I went to the, like, so when I was at the Shadowbringers media tour, I saw the potencies for Gunbreaker and I was like, holy shit, these are so low. And like, you know, when I released all the footage and stuff, one of the things that I kept saying was, well, because a lot of people were looking forward to Gunbreaker, right? It was one of the new classes, you know, and then people saw the potencies. There was so much ass hurt. And I kept telling people, I was like, man, you guys are stupid. Do not, like, all of this shit is subject to change. I don't know why you're getting butt hurt. Like, stop it. Fucking use your brain. Just wait until it comes out. And then it comes out and all these fucking math idiots that did, you know, all these potency calculations and shit were completely fucking wrong. And the same thing might happen again this time.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Like I was seeing that with Scholar too, where people were like, oh, Sage is like the new thing, you know? But it's like, dude, a class could actually have 0 changes. Scholar actually 0. Yeah, I know it does. But I mean, like, before like the embargo was lifted or whatever, like even though your class doesn't have hype changes and you want it to be different, but like that class could just simply have no changes, but to make up for other classes getting changes, they could buff like one ability, like a really consistent shielding ability, and then that class just becomes insane because of just a numbers tune. Like you can't have changes like influence your opinion that much until you actually see how it plays out in real time. Not to mention that obviously their speed buff lasting 20 seconds of a full sprint that's definitely a much longer duration than I thought. But
speed buff and mitigation at the same time. I mean, Moonkin's gone through that before too, right? Where it's been like nobody wants it and then everybody wants it.
Yep, there's a few classes that are always like that in WoW, where it's either like they're way too fucking good or they're terrible. That's kind of the issue you have with WoW when there are too many variables to tune around. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about going into Endwalker. Talk about one class at a time. I think we've all seen the changes. Off the top of my head, I really know the Paladin and Dark Knight ones. I'm not too familiar with the Warrior ones outside of Holmgang being extended or the Gunbreaker ones. So I don't know exactly where you guys want to start. If anyone feels passionate about a class they want to talk about.
I mean, I did just come out with a Gunbreaker video.
Oh shit.
Okay.
I fucking for 20 minutes I complain about how stupid it is to put continuation on Burst Strike, and I don't like double down. The best thing about Gunbreaker and Endwalker is definitely Heart of Corundum, in my opinion. Heart of Corundum is so fucking powerful. It's so strong.
What is that? Sorry?
I guess Second Aurora is going to be okay in progression if somebody dies and your healers need to heal.
Wait, let me look that up.
A new badass mitigative tool.
Heart of Corundum. So when I went to the Shadowbringers tour, one of the tank defensives I was impressed with by the most was Heart of Stone, and this time in the Endwalker, from the the media tour and everything, Heart of Corundum is one of the most impressive abilities. It is absolutely bonkers. It's like 30% DR, and it gives you an XCOG, which apparently the XCOG heals you for 20%
potency
or something like that. Yeah.
The Japanese tooltips from their media tour actually had the potency as part of it.
Oh, okay.
That's like, I saw that myself and I'm like, this feels like an instant lock almost.
Yeah.
It's too good. Like that, those numbers have to be adjusted.
Is that a replacement for Heart of Stone?
It's an upgrade, yeah.
Just an upgraded Heart of Stone, and it's a 30% DR on
so
Heart of Stone.
You get 15 seconds per. You get 15% for 8 seconds, then 15% for 4 seconds. So you get like 30% for the first half.
Well, it's not technically 30%, right? It's like 20,
it's like 28 or something, or
8 or something. I have a spreadsheet with all the mitigations and values now to see like where the balance is, because I was like, TV, I ain't got nothing. I got to know where the break even is. But the thing about Heart of Corundum that's nice is that healing effect. If you drop under 50%, you get healed for 900 potency, which is a Scholar's XCOG, and it's a 30-second duration. And if it doesn't proc, it'll just heal you at the end anyways.
It's the HP is 10. The healing's 10 seconds. It's the mini.
The tooltip is 10.
Damn, dude.
The duration was 30.
TBN in shambles.
Because I thought the 30 was a Brutal Shell, which is a shield that you get as well.
That is there too. But I tested it and I asked a question and they were like, I think the tooltip was a typo, but we'll have to wait. But every time I used it in game, it was 30 seconds.
That's too good.
Yeah, that's way too good. And you can put it on other people too, just like Heart of Stone, right?
Yes.
I feel
all
like
of
that's
those you can put on other people.
I feel like that's such a tremendous, like off tanking ability as well, potentially.
Yes.
Even though they obviously are.
If you use Super Bolide.
Yeah. I mean, that just sounds so good.
Like it basically. So here's. Oh man. So I know we're talking about Gunbreaker, but here's one thing I don't understand, man. Like, I don't understand how you have two tank jobs, okay? Gunbreaker and Warrior, both of them go to 1 with their invuln. But with Gunbreaker having the XCOG, which it procs automatically if you're at 1, that's a big heal. And then Warrior having Bloodwetting on top of Equilibrium, it almost completely negates the fact that you go to 1. Like, the fact that you go to 1 doesn't even matter. But then they don't do anything for Living Dead. So it's like, when you look at like the healing or the invulns between the tanks, it's just Living Dead is so fucking bad. And it's not only bad, but it's bad because it's on that tank. Like if you were to take Living Dead and put it on a Warrior, Living Dead would actually be decent because you might be able to cleanse yourself actually. Yeah. But the fact that it's on that tank makes it double bad. So you put a shit ability on a job that can't even help heal itself. like.
Well, not to mention TBN is also
Yep.
majorly stonks down, right? Unless they make the potency on it huge, because like you could actually just straight up compare the Gunbreaker one to TBN, and
Yes.
that absorb would have to be way bigger relatively than it is in this
Yes.
expansion. to be better
It's
than that.
net neutral at best right now.
I think from what I saw out of the at least with Warrior, Warrior's healing was like it's on average or around like 20k, I think, HP, whereas TBN is like a 16k shield. So TBN is, whether or not you can call it weaker, it's just less HP, but a shield is stronger than healing because a shield will keep you alive. The healing won't against a single large hitting hit.
But bloodwetting gives a shield too.
I know it gives a small shield as well.
Yeah, and
damage
BR.
So does Heart of
Yeah,
Corundum, by the way.
yeah.
So does Heart of Corundum if you used a brutal shot.
Like
And like what makes this even more like less in Dark Knight's favor is the fact that TVN costs something. All this other stuff, it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, it's just all free.
All you want. TVN, it's like, okay, you lost 3,000 mana. Better hope it pops, because if it doesn't, too bad. You lost potency.
Well, then also on that same thing, I feel like Paladins have the opposite problem, where like you as a Dark Knight can have situations where like you either mess up or whatever, and you don't have one available, even if it's off cooldown. Sheltron is also something you can never pop on the pull, right? So like it's just always, even still, it's probably so much minor now because they actually gave that class so much self healing. It's going to feel worse to pull with, unless you actually haven't looked at the opener. Are you request a catting your opener?
There are 3 different openers. One you could do like a wreck into the opener. Another one you can kind of delay fight or flight so you get wreck in your burst, but more often than not. No.
I was about to say, because like if you're pulling with wreck, you're gonna heal yourself so much anyway that you don't give a fuck about not having Sheltron up. But yeah, not to move too far ahead to Paladin. But yeah, I mean that definitely seems like, because Dark Knight, I think that's pretty much the only change with Gunbreaker. But like Gunbreaker versus Dark Knight, because I think they're pretty similar in the way you would bring them. Dark Knight is way too, like, even the new ability they have outside of Blackest Night is on a pretty short cooldown, 2 charges, and it's is it a 20% DR?
10%.
It's 10. Oh, sorry. Sorry, real quick before we move on. I want to say one last thing about Gunbreaker. Right now it's currently broke, and they need to increase No Mercy's duration by 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Because you can't fit all your shit in.
I did a lot of testing before Xeno checked the GC. You need a 2.36.
Yeah, that's
without any
absurd.
clipping at all. And if you had to go faster than that, that's a waste of skill speed, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's
just to get that one ability, one OGCD.
Yeah, it's you're talking about the very last continuation. Yeah.
If we pull Gnashing Thing out, you need to have a 236 or faster to pull the continuation in at the end, and that's if the uptime even allows for it in the rotation.
Yes, yeah.
Which in most cases it fucking won't.
Yeah,
so
it's
have
just
a 9-minute loop. That's ridiculous.
It's just broke. Like I'm not gonna fucking rant about it or anything. I just wanted to point out that Gunbreaker was not tested when they released this shit. It was not tested, and it's broken. And all you fucking Gunbreakers on Copium, you will find out unless they make changes. Hopefully they'll see my video and be like, oh, right. I mean, we meant to increase it by 5 seconds. Yeah, just ignore the tooltip because media, hopefully that happens. But if it doesn't happen, it's going to be obnoxious. Yeah. I also don't like the added continuation on Burst Strike, because one thing that's like underrated.
Mobility tool.
You can't move the boss.
Yeah, you can't fucking move the boss now. Yeah. So, well, okay. I mean, you can. It's just
you can, but you have to be really fucking good at it, man.
So here's my thing, man. Like, because for some reason, people think I don't like the idea of continuation, and I actually do. I think it's kind of cool. I just don't like it's restrictive. So, like, I think it would be cool if instead of being forced right after each ammo combo, if instead, like, let's say, okay, so in my video, I say the animation looks like Blasting Zone, right? Because that's why you use a Jugular Rip after Gnashing Fang. It's because of the RP and the lore, and it, Jugular Rip looks like it goes with Gnashing Fang, right? But I say fuck all that and just give like 3 stacks of continuation or whatever, and you can use a continuation stack after any GCD and just change the animation to look like Blasting Zone. So then that way you can do like a Gnashing Fang double weave defensives then do a Wicked Talon or whatever the fuck it's called, and then do a continuation into something else. Like basically it accomplishes the exact same thing, but it just makes it more user friendly.
You can save it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I kind of went with a different approach. I was like, why not just increase the potency of the continuation, make it a longer cooldown, so you do proc it off of a continuation button, but then you're only using it like once every 30 seconds, so you could still move between the other buttons.
I mean, like I said, a lot of this went into what I talked about before with urgency. You have to press that stuff on Gunbreaker. You don't have to on some of the other classes.
Yeah.
And that really makes Gunbreaker harder to play. Although, from a damage perspective, Gunbreaker should be, I feel like, easier than ever before, because isn't a lot of stuff on one button now? Your Gnashing Fang?
The one button doesn't matter. That part doesn't
the double
matter.
Down that kind of changes what you're doing and makes it really janky. The third cartridge more than anything. It's like at first glance, you're like, yay, more. I mean, Xeno, you probably came to the same conclusion, right? Where you looked at it and you're like, well, this is gonna fuck everybody up that just wants to know how to do a 60-second loop because there isn't one. And you got to do things that you don't want. Like your brain's not gonna think to do it.
Like I think what their logic was we're gonna add a GCD inside of No Mercy, because you only use double down inside of No Mercy, which I think is kind of stupid, but whatever. But they're gonna add a GCD to an already tight No Mercy window, but then they don't increase the duration of No Mercy. You can't just, if you want to fit everything in the burst, you can't add a GCD to the burst but not increase the burst. It doesn't work that way. Like you have to increase the burst to accommodate the extra GCD in there.
And for context, it's specifically the 3-minute burst that's like the super tight one when you have your Bloodfest that gives you the 3 extra cartridges. That the other ones aren't so bad. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, the normal ones are actually fine. You can end with like a I think it's a
you're gonna have like 2 of your regular buttons. Yeah.
You can end with one of those, which is fine, because then you can get like you can fit the burst strike continuation, and so the actual No Mercy is fine, but it's the super burst, like what you mentioned, which is bad. You just can't do it. Like you literally have to pop No Mercy after Gnashing Fang, which is fucking stupid. Like, yeah, let me use my ammo combo, but I'm gonna delay my steroid. Like it just was so obvious that it like wasn't tested or the tooltip isn't updated. But you know, I'm hoping that it's just going to be increased, because that's a very simple change. And actually, if you increase it to 25 seconds, then that means everything will work out. Yeah, it solves everything. Just that one small change.
For your understanding, Max, imagine you had to do Goring Blade before Fight or Flight every time.
Yes.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it makes sense. It sounds so. More specifically on like the changes, so do you guys agree that you think the Dark Knight changes are a bit underwhelming in general?
Absolutely, I do.
For what you'd want from the class. Comparatively,
I think it's probably going to be the beginner-friendly tank now.
Well, my only thing with that is, okay, so if you see Dark Knight, you think kind of loses its niche a little bit. Where would you like to see changes in Dark Knight, or maybe just outside of buffs, right? Like just they could be like, oh well, we're just gonna make this class do a lot of damage then if it's not as good as other stuff. I just mean like conceptually, what would you like to see changed in Dark Knight for them to kind of fit into the meta in their own way?
I want to see Living Dead changed. I want to see Dark Mind changed. I want to see TBN changed. I think TBN should just be free, and they should remove Dark Arts completely.
That is a questionable decision.
I think so.
Way back in the day, I didn't expect Missionary. I thought they'd let us Dark Arts our Dark Mind and half the value and give it as an AoE. I thought that would have been cool.
I don't understand what you mean by Dark.
By what?
Why would you change Dark Mind? It's good.
This sucks.
I disagree. It's very good.
I think it would be better. Dark Mind would be way better if it was 15% all damage instead of 20% magic damage. I think it would be crazy good.
That'd be great.
Camouflage is only a benefit, right? Because it's 10% for 20 seconds is effectively the same as 20% for 10 seconds. But Dark Mind is not effectively the same if you're getting hit with only physical.
Yeah, my issue with Dark Mind is that it doesn't work. It doesn't work on physical. Like that's my issue. Is that, and when it does work on magic, it's not like super fucking good. Like back in Stormblood, it used to be 30%, which was crazy good, which is really strong. And that was cool. but then they nerfed it to 20% for no reason. And like I guess my opinion is when you can use Dark Mind, I don't think that it is like super good. I mean, yeah, sure, it's good.
You want to know the only time I think it saved me, Xeno? Homing laser.
It's it's good on homing laser because you can use it. Yeah.
I think it was good in E11 as well. There was like enough consistent magic tank busters on 11 for Dark Mind to feel really good. Also soaking orbs on E10 as well was something like pretty common to where you could use
the infrequency of damage though just made it so lax even in progression.
Yeah.
If you're using Dark Mind solely for tank busters, you're using it wrong.
Use it for remove autos, dude.
I mean, anytime that there's like magic damage, you can pretty much pop it in there because for the most part, Dark Mind, it's got the benefit of the 60-second cooldown. You can use it all the time, and it's not very interesting of an ability. It's actually extremely boring. But the fact that it exists on a 60-second cooldown means you can do a lot with it. Like I use it in certain fights on just random AoE. Like when you get hit by a hard AoE, you hit Dark Mind, you hit TBN at the same time. Next
like an AoE
attack,
into a buster.
Yeah, but that's placebo though. Like you don't actually need the Dark Mind though. Like you still require the same amount of healing. Like if you're using, here's my mentality. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying that it could be better because using Dark Mind on auto attacks and a raid wide when like that's the best thing to use it on, I just have a problem with that. I see that cooldown has an issue.
So I find it being like some of the stuff I've been doing recently in O12S, I've noticed I get low going into some AoE. TBN plus Dark Mind helps save my life. But at the same time...
But what if Dark Mind just wasn't magic? What if it gave you the same mitt and just wasn't magic?
I might readjust where I put it. But remember that like a lot of the damage in this game that actually matters and will kill you is magic.
That's true.
Physical does not exist in this game half the time. And it is a problem. That's partly what makes Dark Knight good, is the fact that physical doesn't exist. If it did...
When I was binding Dark Knight, I was noticing all of the parallels for it. Seems like Dark Knight was heavily inspired by Blood Decay from WoW. Like the fact that Living Dead needs to be healed off very much seems like a weird way of doing Purgatory, which is like a cheat death thing in WoW for getting killed and getting healed out of it. And then Dark Mind to me always seemed, like a Salted Earth seems like Death and Decay, just all the way down the road. It's not obviously the same, but it's very inspired. I've always felt Dark Mind was just like AMS on a 1-minute cooldown, magic specific, the only magic ability of any tank on a 1-minute cooldown. That's like, in WoW it's an absorb, in this game it's a damage reduction, but same thing. That's kind of where I feel like that at least initially came from.
They used to be able to heal more. They used to have a 20% heal Soul Survivor, and if you used it on an ad and the ad died, it refreshed its cooldown. And you used to be able to spam Abyssal Drain, and if you augmented it, you could heal, but that was really only used in dungeons. I don't know. I thought a really neat interaction for TBN would be, if you're going to keep its drawback of fucking taking mana, why not just make the shield be absorbed as a heal when it expires instead of eating it and fucking sacking your damage?
Yeah, I think, man, look, I just think they should remove the mana cost, put on 25-second cooldown, make it a 15% shield, and for the first 4 seconds you negate 10% extra damage, something like that. That's what I think.
Sure. I don't know how I'd feel about that part. I mean, it'd probably be pretty good, and I'd probably really like it. It's just like, the 15-second cooldown is super good, especially when you find a window for it. The thing is, though, okay, so you mentioned placebo. Here's the thing, 2 things on that. One, a lot of tank cooldown stuff, like between all the tanks, you don't actually need to do it half the time because your healers are going to heal you anyway. So it's like, whatever. It feels like everything's placebo at that point.
You're playing with good healers.
Yeah, brother.
I am playing with good healers. And I don't really pug, so I don't understand the pug life.
Ooh,
the rest of you do. But
go play some party finder week 2. See what happens.
I refuse, man.
I do not wish.
That sounds like me in WoW. There was like a couple of years where I never did a single bit of content that wasn't filled with limit players, and I actually had no fucking clue how the game worked outside of that.
Yeah, it's like, man, Okay, Dark Knight's one of my favorite tanks, man. Honestly, I really have a lot of fun with it. It's just it just could be better, man. I just really feel like that it could be better. I feel like the Dark Mind could be better. It just, man, 15% all damage would be so much better than what it is currently. I feel like I've never been a fan of TBN's being tied to damage. Like basically Dark Knight to me is, it just is like it's like there's always some drawback, man. Like Dark Mind is magic only, TBN tied to your damage, Living Dead, you have to be healed. It's just like you have these annoying fucking drawbacks and no other tank has it. And I just feel like that it's unfair.
Well, I feel like with TBN and all that, it's such a strong cooldown that's flexible enough that you're able to put it wherever like something could be difficult for yourself or your group. Or if you're terrible at planning like me, it's taking you some time to actually learn the timeline, or you mess something up earlier, pop it in there, it'll probably keep you alive. It's just, it feels flexible, it's smooth, and it has trade-offs to it, and that is something I really enjoy about the class, is the trade-off aspect of, should I press this TBN here because it could be used for DPS increase, because you could get like an edge under Trick better that way, or is it like increasing your healer's damage, or is it making certain things easier? Which making things easier partly goes into placebo in a way. I actually think that's a good thing, because if you look healthy and your healers feel that you're healthy, they will make better judgment and better decisions. Because at the end of the day, if we were all able to actually play the way people think we should be able to play, by like optimizing cooldowns really fast, or like, oh, you don't need to do those GCD heals, you got all these off GCDs, we'd all be 100 percentile FF logs speedrunners with like perfect runs very quickly. That's not how the world works.
It's also, I think being higher health actually does increase your play. Like if you were to look in WoW at least, and you were to look at a group of 20 people dealing with the mechanic, and you were to play it 100 times over, and 50 of those times everyone's at 10% health doing that mechanic,
I've known
and
Sindalf
50%
a long
of the
time,
time
man.
you're at 100%, you would mess up infinitely more in the scenario where you are approaching death than you would when you are topped and healthy. So that's actually kind of real. Like being higher and feeling out of danger can actually improve your awareness of other things.
Definitely a mentality thing. Like I think if you look at groups that speedrun a lot, like Silink, who took Shiva Savage, right? They're probably very aware of their limitations. So if your healers tell you to trust, they probably just blindly do that and like, okay, that's fine. Although I do largely agree with you. For a big part of the population, you freak out if you're not full. Which has its merit. And TBN being used as a DPS increase for other jobs, 100% great. Or sometimes things happen. You know, your ranged might not be in range for a heal at the time or whatever, and it's going to save their life. And things like, I started thinking about Oblation, because it's got 2 charges of Oblation and a TBN. Imagine a healer goes down, you have one other healer up, they're not really good at healing because their resources are down, and now you could throw TBN on somebody, 2 Oblations on 2 other people. You get like a Heart of Corundum, now your entire DPS stock is covered, right?
Yeah, I feel like you're going to treat Oblation like you do a lot of times with like your Oath Gauge, where like it's kind of capped. You know, like I feel like you're going to save 2 charges of Oblation for like how many times are you actually going to have 2 charges?
Yeah, it's
you know
kind
what I mean?
of a shitty cooldown, actually. It's like 30 seconds.
Yeah, so,
you're not
the optimist, or the optimization in you wants to keep it rolling. You never want to let it cap, you know. But it's like, how many times is that actually going to impact something really happening? And TBN is already really good. Like I do think TBN is really strong. But like the thing is like we're talking about this with Dark Knight, on how, at least for me, Dark Knight seems like the clear, in a like world first progression scenario, seems like the tank, outside of it being a comfort pick, seems like one that would fall out of the meta with the way the other classes are right now.
I think the problem was TBN was good. It wasn't overpowered. Like I think people overvalued it, but it wasn't. It was strong, but now it's equal, I would say.
Yeah, that's the issue. Is like currently you can make an argument that TBN is stronger than like Raw Intuition, but I mean in Endwalker, No, that's not the case anymore.
No.
Like,
and if you're going to bring a party mitigation that's multi-hit, because Shake and Veil are single hit. If you were going to bring one, you'd bring Heart of Light, because you're going to get Heart of Corundum and you're going to get the damage of Gunbreaker, assuming they still
absolutely. And like think of how Dark Knight gets out of that hole though without giving them an ability. What do you buff that gives them a unique, not broken way that they see themselves into top level progression right now?
Like, I mean, I think they're top level right now. I mean, Sindalf gets world first, and he loves Dark Knight.
No, I mean in Endwalker specifically.
Oh, I mean, I actually think Dark Knight isn't gonna get any worse. I don't think.
That's the point. I think everything else is getting better. Like,
yeah,
I would be willing.
Yeah,
I'd be willing to bet so much that so many of the top groups tank comp is some combination of Warrior, Gunbreaker, or Paladin for sure. The next raid.
So with all the other tanks getting better and Dark Knight being worse, I really do see going into maybe not the first patch, because comfort's going to play a huge role in that one. But going into the future, if all these numbers stay the same, Dark Knight might not be taken for progression anymore. While still, like, the powerful shielding is good, and that is probably its main thing that it brings that's going to put it ahead, because it has a cost. It's not something people use often. Like, even look at a lot of the like week 1 kills for any fight this expansion. Most of the fights, you go look at that TBN usage, you go look at the final fight, they got 5 usages of it, something like that. They got a pretty low amount.
because it has to proc.
I mean,
that's a lot of damage.
But there are situations, right? Like when we are, I mean, this is going to be super fucking niche, right? But the active mitigation on TBN that I could think of was in Tank Top, where we brought a Dark Knight specifically because of TBN. Even though it didn't proc sometimes, we just needed it to survive. But in a standard comp Savage, you don't really need that. I would make TBN absorb at the end and heal you for the value that's left over. And when Dark Mind's up, I would make it like Vengeance, where it does return damage on physical, except for Dark Mind, instead of return damage, I would do return heal when you receive damage. So you kind of get a return on it. So even if it's not, like, if they're going to keep it with magic, you can still make it so when you get hit, it can heal you, even if it's not a magic attack.
I feel like if they don't buff Ablation and they don't do anything else, I think they need to lean in to the way I see it. Obviously, in my opinion, they would lean into Dark Knight being the personal mitigation fiend, like the class that, like, you're the safest for every tank buster, but you maybe don't have the most preferable raid cooldown. You're not bringing, obviously the damage will probably be pretty similar, but they kind of lean into that aspect in some way by just, maybe increase their self healing a bit, right? Where they're just like, this is like the tank's tank, but there can be a fight where, like, man, that's really valuable for us. But on another fight, it can be like, man, these other abilities that other tanks have are just better, right? Where it could be more of an actual intricate decision than it just seems like right now the other 3 tanks just have more tools.
The other tanks will be easier possibly to learn on, just because with that whole thing about not using TBN very often, just because, like, it has the cost to it and it has to proc, so people don't use it very much. Everything else being so good and also free just opens up that whole, you're going to see players actually press their buttons, or at least I would hope so. You're going to see them press their buttons. And if they mess it up a little bit, it doesn't actually matter. So they're going to use it more often.
Yeah, because you don't have to get full value out of anything else. You can get 50, 70%, 60, it doesn't matter. And like all of these abilities fucking heal you. So literally, as long as you live through the buster or through the damage, which is not hard considering how strong all of these cooldowns are, as long as you live, you're actually going to be healed afterwards too. And that's like one of the biggest, like the most underwhelming thing, in my opinion, was what they chose to focus on Dark Knight. Like, they didn't, they just fucking gave it more off GCDs, man. Like, they gave a job that already has like bursty phases with a lot of off GCDs. They just gave them more. And I mean, I like off GCDs. They're fun, but there was a lot of stuff that they could have done that would have been better. Like, I mean, the off GCDs they got, like, I don't know why the fuck they thought it was a good idea to add on to Salted Earth, but they didn't even add on to it well. It's just another hit.
It sound like people complained about it being moved out, so now they gave you the ability to front load the damage before you move the. Well, they could have just changed the ability, right? They could have just made it anything else.
Yeah, it's also like this also, oh, this might not come up very much, but in a way they kind of nerfed it because now you can't place it. So if you can't get to the spot that you want to place to, then you just have to place it where you are. I mean, that's probably never going to matter, but I'm just saying, like,
if you did, like, if there was
me all the time,
if there was competitive dungeons, that would matter, because there's times where you'd want the salted earth like slightly off your character, right? So
yeah,
like,
I mean, yeah, like I'm pretty sure it's not going to be a huge impact, but it's just like, man, if you're going to take a skill and you're going to think about it, and okay, for whatever, because like salted earth is pretty shitty anyway. Like it's what, like 300 potency, I think, on a minute and a half or something, or how much, I can't even remember how much potency it is, but it's really low. But anyway, over the course of your entire fight, the amount of damage you gain from salted earth is like super low in comparison to, like, you know, edge and, you know, your GCDs and stuff. So they took an ability that kind of doesn't matter and they expanded on it. When they did that, but on the same hand, they didn't even make blood weapon 5 charges. Like, what the fuck are they doing?
That was the number one
like
complaint I had anyways, and from what I hear from people is blood weapon is just really bad on anybody who lags for any amount of time at all. And then Sindalf just runs 2.4 and just says, what problem?
No, I run 2.38.
Okay. So
I run that because, well, partly the blood weapon issues, because I don't want to think about it, especially when its duration isn't actually 10 seconds, like 9.96 or something.
Very weird thing for them to not change, by the way. That, like, it could be solved with the charges, or just literally make it as long as delirium used to be. Like, why not? You know, like, why does it have to be?
It was brought up in an interview, and they said that they had never heard anyone talk about blood weapon being a problem.
Yeah, that is so funny. Because
wasn't that the same interview that Yoshi said the devs play their own game?
Yeah, but it was also the same interview where they said that, like, they changed delirium because of stress feedback from the community. So
I think
I've heard people complain about blood weapon way more than delirium.
I think Japan ping is like fucking their actual knowledge base for what it's like to play other places, because like maybe they have like crazy internet, because I've seen multiple ping questions where they're basically like saying like, have you tried rebooting your router level answers, where it's like clearly like, no, this is something a lot of people actually deal with. Like the ping, high ping can really negatively impact your experience in this game.
For a lot of jobs, most jobs, like machinist too. Like, I'm on the East Coast, and if I don't run a VPN, I literally cannot play machinist properly, or gunbreaker.
Yeah, some people from EU have better ping than East Coast players. Well, from what I heard, I don't know if that's still true or not, but it was a while back.
EU has really sick fiber. So like when we have our players playing at, like,
I know that was
like
a thing a while
ago.
I don't know if it's still a
for the Race World First and Eternal Palace, like right when Shadowbringers came out, we had like 90 ping to an NA server in the middle of the country.
Holy hell.
From London. So yeah, it's like you get like the internet infrastructure in EU is really good.
Yeah, I do think Dark Knight will be fine. I think it's still gonna be really good. It's just, yeah, I do think it was underwhelming, and I think that they chose to focus on the wrong things to improve on. I think that the things that they gave Dark Knight, if you look at what Dark Knight needed, it didn't need more off GCDs. It needed a Living Dead rework, blood weapon rework. You can argue the Dark Mind thing, and you can argue the TBN thing, but regardless,
you can even leave Dark Mind away. I think TBN's more important, right?
Like, well, yeah. So, okay, you know what? We'll just exclude TBN, even though I do think it should be on, 25 seconds, whatever. Shouldn't cost your mana. The focus should have definitely been on Living Dead, and it should have been on Blood Weapon. And when I asked Yoshi what he thought about Living Dead and what he thought about Hallowed, and he thinks that Hallowed Ground is the most powerful. He thinks it's the best. At least he did in Shadowbringers, and I don't know if he still feels that way, but he also said that Living Dead is the way it is because of lore. So balancing around lore.
Well, here's the problem, right? Is that Living Dead also no longer has the strength of being like a long duration, right? They're all now all of them.
Yeah, they're all 10 seconds.
Which I guess now fucks Hollow Ground a little bit because it's got the activation time, so I might even say that Super Bowl Lide's the strongest.
I hope that
it does not. No,
I hope home game doesn't go up.
An A rank and it fucked.
Oh,
and home
man.
game went instantly.
Hollowed Ground is the only thing that I see not good about Paladins. I feel like that class. I guess we can kind of shift to paladin. So I'll be the I'll stand in and be the paladin simp.
Paladin.
That
Paladin
class
simp.
looks
Let's
cracked
go, dude.
and jacked for Endwalker.
It
like,
is. It
like,
looks amazing. Yeah.
It looks incredible.
Mm-hmm.
They gave
Paladin
them the
looks
Holy
so good.
Spirit self healing. They gave the ability to pop your own divine veil with that. I believe that's still how that works if people
And
test
veil
it.
applies a heal on activation.
Yeah, and it applies heal on
yes, your Holy
activation.
Spirit can activate and fuck it.
The only major real
Paladin
downfall of
looks really
Paladin in
good,
this
man.
current expansion, outside of the stuff that still exists in Endwalker, is the fact that they were the only tank that did not have self healing in their combo, and they did not have. They didn't have, what was it? Oh yeah, one of their off globals did damage based on how much health you had. So they were just seen as like the off tank. They were the tank you never wanted to have tanking, even though majorly overblown. You could tank every boss in the game as a paladin and be just fine. But they changed everything about it. Whole Sheltron, Holy Sheltron, and New Intervention are just insanely good. So I think that class had the most good things applied to it, different from the current. They basically took every bit of that class's faults and made them good. And I think the most broken thing about them by far is not the AoE on their new combo, not any of those changes, but the fact that one of the tanks will be able to be fully mobile and ranged for 16 seconds out of every minute is just fucking insane. Like,
yeah, it's really good.
It's so fucking good. All right, that's it. I'm done nutting. You can add
the only thing that the Paladin didn't really get an upgrade on was cover, but I think that they kind of abandoned cover, because cover in Stormblood used to be fucking broken as shit. It had no gauge cost and gave you a rampart.
It had no right to be as strong as
yeah, so in a sense, like, you basically used to use cover as part of your mitigation. Like back in Stormblood, Paladin could mitigate like magic damage like as much as a fucking Dark Knight.
You would just have like the warrior hold aggro, and you'd cover when it was time to take your busters.
Yeah, you would just fucking cover that shit, and it was really, really powerful. Like in 012, you had a DPS stand in the tank portion of the tank buster, and you just cover on Paladin, and that was the Paladin's cooldown.
Go even further than that. The Paladin would not turn their stance on at all. We'd have our Bard not use their aggro dump, and they would maintain first to an aggro. And if they got picked for a tank bus, you just cover them.
Oh yeah,
the whole fight.
Yeah, I think Paladin's going to be super strong. Again, though, we talked about it earlier, but I do think that because of all of that, if you're going to make a tank DPS hierarchy, I do think that Paladin should be on kind of the lower end because of all their utility.
100%.
I'm not saying it has to be like 5 or 10% below. I'm just saying, like, if let's say we have a 2% wiggle room, where the lowest is, like 1% and the highest is 3%, it should probably be like 1 or 1.5%, somewhere around there. But if it's not, that's fine too. But
it literally should be there. You could just say right now, Paladins will do 2% less damage than all the other 3 tanks, and they would still be insanely good progression
yes.
tools.
Given 100%. Yeah. 100%.
That's my point, is like the damage, like the minuscule damage difference. I mean, yeah, when you're going to enrage and you're literally killing it 2 seconds away, it can matter, but I feel like it's not like the jobs are so balanced. It's not going to be so much about what job you pick. It's going to be about your optimization in the fight, like how much uptime that you get, how much you optimize and stuff. So I don't think that percentage would matter. I mean, it might, but I don't think so. And I feel like that being able to attack from range for so long, it's just, and be like the highest damage, it's like a bit much.
No, it shouldn't be the case. The fact that, even alone, take away the fact that Paladin has an extra like raid CD kinda, and that raid CD got buffed, and now that they have self healing and all that, the damage thing just in general isn't like one of the main reasons that Fizz range does less like overall like min max damage, is because they can just run around and do whatever the fuck the whole fight. Like, they're just like, that's so good to optimize in progression that we need to like reduce how much total you can do if optimized. That Paladin is the exact same argument. It will be infinitely easier to optimize on a Paladin in progression with downtime than it will other tanks. they're just naturally it's going to be easier for them to do that with, especially now that the range phase is 50% longer, and the draw is, you know, if you ever get lost in your rotation or you fuck it up, you feel real fucking bad. But
no, that it's gonna be actually smoother now. You're gonna be able to do a lot of things. Like let's say you fuck up because your crafted gear's substats are shit, right? And you're fucked up, and you have too much skill speed. You can activate your Requiescat ranged phase while you're in your physical phase and hold on to the stacks and use them as filler as you go.
Yeah,
it's actually way easier now. It's gonna make, like, that might even be the easiest to min max on in progression.
Yeah.
As opposed to the
Also,
hardest.
it's so like currently in like paladin like damage and shit. Atonement. You often look at your number of atonements versus holy spirits, and currently like atonement does a little more damage than holy spirits. So if you're ever trying to cut out abilities for like phase shifts or whatever, and you're trying to squeeze in extra confiteors, you're gonna cut out a holy spirit before you cut out an atonement, because an atonement does more damage. But, well, you know, again, according to the tooltips, this is subject to change, but holy spirit is going to do more damage than atonement. So well, in Endwalker, so you're basically, you gain an extra range GCD too, and that's going to matter, like, sometimes, I feel.
If it ends up doing more potency than atonement in general, it's going to matter every time, because you're going to come out now that, so your blade combo, the new one that replaces your goring blade, it's going to give you 500 mana per button as well, plus your OGCD that gives you 500. So you're going to come out of that phase with an extra clemency or holy spirit pocketed.
Exactly. So you'd be able to actually throw in free heals without worrying about going into your next magic phase down mana. Yeah.
Downside being that if you have to do it during your blade combo, it just drops, which is a really small downside. It's like every minute.
I also feel like, and this is totally not a thing, because like competitive dungeons are not a thing in this game, which, by the way, just random note, I thought if they implemented it well and there weren't any it wasn't required to do, I think it would be really, really fucking cool to do that. I think paladins will absolutely fucking blast in dungeons too, because like you could do like your range phase for AoE, right? And then like all three of those combos have like pretty high potency AoEs, right? So like I feel, and then also hollowed ground for like giant pulls. So I feel like you'd have just,
It's going to be really
have
good
the
on
biggest pop off potential on a pack
multi-target.
potentially.
I mean, like, dungeons don't really matter too much, but there are there are
challenges. They take fights
bosses with trash.
They also do host,
well, not trash, but like
cash
ads
prizes
and stuff.
They host dungeon competitions as well. Although in dungeon speedruns, you typically run a warrior and 3 DPS, because a warrior can keep themselves alive the whole time.
Yeah, that makes
with
sense.
No offset. But in these competitions, they have restrictions, like you must run standard comp. And in that case, yeah, Paladin's going to be so good. It would be cool if they had a Mythic Plus system, but the dungeon speedruns are nice when you have interest.
Yeah, every time I brought up the like Mythic Plus, if it was implemented well, I've been met with a ton of resistance. Some of it makes sense, but also some of it is like, it's in WoW, so I don't want it, which is,
you know what, though?
Always pretty funny.
They said never. They said never, never, never. And then from this media tour set of interviews, they said maybe.
Yep.
I mean, so, yeah, I mean, it's literally, I mean, it's potentially really good content if you do it right. There's no other argument than that. Like, it is very, very good content if implemented right. But obviously there's a lot of hesitation for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, game just needs harder dungeons. Like, dungeons in this game are such a fucking joke, man. It would just be really cool to, like, you know, go in with 4 or even 8 people, you know, but, you know, preferably 4, just because it's a little smaller. But just do like, cause some of the dungeons in this game, they're actually really awesome, like aesthetically, and the bosses, they kind of have like cool mechanics. The problem is they don't. Yeah, the problem is that nothing is punishing. So I feel like if you took that cool dungeon with like the nice aesthetic and you made the mechanics in it actually just straight kill you, I feel like that would be pretty fun. I feel like that'd be pretty fun to do.
They'd have to be the ones that aren't tied to the MSQ, though, because there would be a fire if they were.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or they just take the ones from the MSQ and just put like the Savage tag on it, or the I don't know, the Unreal, or whatever the fuck they want to do.
I also think another maybe weirder to address problem with making dungeons cool and hard new content is the fact that one of the reasons this game is you can really play any class in the game is balanced really well is because it's all balanced around single target. As soon as you start adding multiple more forms of damage types, 2-target cleave being more prominent, AoE being more prominent. The game is not very balanced, right? So they would have to look more into that.
Square Enix has said that, like, even though people ask for this, part of the reason they don't do it is because the game is balanced around 8-man parties. And as we definitely know, 4-man parties are very imbalanced right now. Compared, like, one comp is definitely better than the other. Warrior is extremely good. So
Hey, what's wrong with that, man?
we're just probably never going to see it, partly because of that.
If anything, it would be in like Palace of the Dead type content where other actions dictate how you attack.
Most likely, yeah, because they never, like, anytime you think of an idea and you're like, oh, this would be cool, and then you think about how unbalanced it'll be, SC is instantly gonna just be like, we're gonna have the Heaven's Ward flag in the sky then, and just be like, wait a minute, we can't ever do this again. Like, they will never let something into this game again that is that unbalanced, and 4-man content is that.
Do you know much of the history about 14 Max?
Like I've seen the No Clip documentary. I've watched a Mr. Happy video about how rating has progressed over a long period of time, but the video was made at the end of Heaven's Word, so a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. There was a choke point where players were met with really difficult content because they asked for harder content. We were met with Gordius.
Yo, before I got into content creation,
which was an awesome.
I watched Happy's videos, man.
And the community decided the game sucked. They weren't bad at the game.
Does this guy do this for a living?
Hard and mathematically
this is crazy,
unclearable.
Man. Oh no, I'm serious. I thought to myself, man, one day I hope I'm able to do this.
Xeno, a bunch of groups that decided we need to improve at the game, right? I don't think they will ever make that decision again to give us something challenging in that vein because it had just such a negative uproar.
Happy's been a content creator for a long time.
It seems like a safe choice to just not.
Yeah, WoW actually had that.
I've been doing
it
for like
all
6 years.
Absolutely unbelievably easy things, and like Wrath
BC, I know he's been doing it longer
in Classic had they never like had too big of a difficulty jump at one time. Really,
I think Happy played 11.
Kind of really naturally just over time, even up until now, has kind of just always been getting harder. But there was definitely people that were like, no, there's no way we're bad, So but then like the game gets re-released, and I mean every single thing that took weeks and months is one shot, right? Like so. It's been funny in WoW at least to see that play out again. You'd see the same thing in a Final Fantasy remade where a lot of those fights would be released in their original form and would get absolutely destroyed by the current player skill in the game.
I mean, players definitely better now than they were before. So I think if SE was to re-release and it was brand new to everybody, all those old fights, they'd get cleared faster. But
yeah, I think so too.
Like, you also need to remember that we got Midas after, where SE was like, okay, we'll give you less DPS checks and more mechanics. That's what the community asked for. And that's what gave us auto attacks, being you don't have to face the boss anymore because Square Enix realized, oh, players can't do mechanics and damage at the same time. And then we got Creator, which has basically been the blueprint for all Savages ever since, which has much less DPS checks and much mechanics that really aren't that punishment. However, at least on the topic of raid design, I think DPS checks have actually gotten a little harder since then. I think all the DPS checks in Shadowbringers have been harder than Stormblood. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, our first time we got to the last part of Kefka, we were like, I think we're going to kill the boss, and then we did.
I've had to work way harder for DPS checks in Shadowbringers than I did.
They fucking nerfed us, dude. Because healers are dealing more damage. It's fucking bullshit, dude.
Fucking true, man.
I mean, that is how that is. But it's also like
you're just doing your best, and then they press misery, and you're like, oh well, I'll just go fuck myself.
When misery crit direct hits, it's actually worth like 3 seconds.
Man, I want to be able to hit one button and deal a lot of damage.
You mean you don't want to do the gunbreaker rotation? You just want to press glare?
I just want to hit glare, dude.
So the one thing we haven't really touched on is Warrior. We've kind of talked around the other 3 tanks. I actually am not too familiar with the Warrior changes. So what's the vibe of that class other than Home Gang going to 10?
Warrior's fucking awesome. It's gonna be so good in Endwalker.
Awesome.
It's like There's like the only downside was they still haven't fixed Inner Chaos to not eat a stack of Inner Release, but
every GCD eats a stack, man, except for Primal Rend. It sucks. They should just make it so that way the only ones that eat it are the Felclate.
Yeah. Like Warrior saw like upgrades in almost every area. I don't think it saw a single downside. Its self-healing is going to be absolutely fucking ridiculous. Bloodwetting is so it doesn't have as much upfront mitigation, but overall I think it has a better usage than any of the others. Like Bloodwetting is you can use it for self-sustain, and you can use it also for the shield, and you can use it for tank buster. Also, Inner Release being 60 seconds is going to be really, really fucking awesome. That was the best thing about Dark Knight 2, actually, was the Delirium, was that those two got changed, because Delirium being 90 with it's like Shadow being 2 minutes and like Inner Release being 90 is kind of fucking annoying.
So now just every 2 minutes, Dark Knight's going to just bust.
Yeah, my favorite iteration of Warriors, like so far, was actually 4.1 Warrior, when Berserk and Inner Release were two separate, and Berserk was a minute, and Inner Release was 2 minutes, and you like combine the buffs, and I really liked. Yeah, I really liked combining the buffs. I thought that was really, really cool. Warrior and Endwalker, I think, is going to be super strong. I mean, obviously his damage might not suck, but you know, we don't know really because of potencies. But like Bloodwetting is really good. I have no fucking idea why they buffed Home Gang, but I hope that they don't increase the cooldown of Home Gang.
I just feel like well, I mean, in the build it wasn't changed, but I feel like maybe they'll just give us busters that are going to be 10 seconds long, and so it's equal. Because remember Titan, in when we did Titan Savage, Home Gang didn't last long enough for all 3 Stone Crushers. They had to buff it, so you had to actually mitigate the first hit before you Home Gang.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy though. A 10-second invuln on 4 minutes. That's ridiculous. Like the low CD on Home Gang is so fucking good. It is ridiculous. It's like noticeable too. Like take this current raid tier. Like you can invuln both the anti-airs in 9. You can invuln 1 and 3 on 10. I guess in 11 it kind of doesn't matter.
On P1 of 12 you could do it as well, first and third.
Yeah. So the cool thing with Warrior is
for a second. I mean, fucking if you want.
Yeah, like so that's the cool thing about that is you can actually do it like first and second, or you can do it first and third, or you can even save Home Gang for Lions. I've saved pulls using Home Gang on Lions. So if you use it first and third, you can use it on Lions and just CD the last buster. Like it's just, man, it's just really good.
And their Shake It Off applies a heal now as well.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Still rips your buffs, but
so the big thing that I would compare them to now is multi-hit mitigation versus shields and heals. I'm also going to post I'll post something in here as just kind of like an academic reading if you want to see it. I wrote out just a few examples of
it's so good
how they compare to one another, with TBN Oblation being on the far right because I fucking forgot. But you can kind of see how they're pretty comparable to each other until you add the healing, and then TBN just kind of falls on its face.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna prog Warrior 99.9% unless its damage is shit, and then I'm probably gonna play Paladin. That's my plan anyway.
I'm having Warrior with Gunbreaker backup. I think Sakima's gonna have Gunbreaker with Paladin backup.
I'm probably gonna, I'm gonna most likely learn Warrior Gunbreaker, and Dark Knight you don't have to learn. If you can play Dark Knight now, you can play it in Endwalker.
Yeah.
It's no different. So
same thing with Paladin, but with quality of life. Its rotation largely won't change unless you have to shift, in which case it's just easier.
Yeah, that's the good thing about Dark Knight though, is like it just basically stayed the same except for got 3 extra off GCDs if you include both charges of Shadowbringer.
The thing, like 2 things on Warrior. So like one, Bloodwetting and Nascent Flash, with its healing being so powerful now, if these numbers stay the same, consider that for anything that isn't a tank buster, like your typical like auto attacks that you might end up using, or AoE that you'd end up using something like TBN on, because that's, for myself, that's the main comparison. TBN breaks in 2 autos for most bosses. There are a few that it doesn't, and that's like ridiculous in those situations. But it's usually about 2. But then when you have a healing for warrior that can do more than that, plus the tiny shield and the little bit of mitigation, it comes down to it that, oh, like, you can fit that. You can actually heal
I think
that little
Blood
bit of
Wedding is going to be
damage
so fucking good,
much
man.
easier, and I think that's going to make its
It's going to be
usability
so
of the
fucking
class
good.
and like mitigation in general just go up. And at least for myself, with home gang's lower cooldowns, I'm personally someone who doesn't use, I mean, lower invuln cooldown. I'm personally someone who does not use their tank invulns very often in prog.
We went all of Shiva Savage thinking we needed it later. We mitigated
Heart
through
of Corundum is really
double
good too,
slap.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
you
is
typically
Holy
don't
Shelter.
always know if you're going to need it, and that is a risk that you take when you use it. Like, for example,
Yeah.
Max, when you used invulns on in O12S, on that Shiva section, I think that is the dumbest usage, not just because I think it's dumb because you don't need it for that mechanic, but also where you use it in the fight is just awful. You didn't know what was coming next, so how do you know you're not going to need this or want it? Because remember, the whole tank thing, you need to know 2 minutes ahead of time to know whether or not you, like, to know what your cooldown rotation is going to look like. So
No, I agree with Sindalf.
you need
No, I
something to
agree.
fill in the gaps.
No,
And
they
that's your
misuse their
when
invuln.
that happens.
Yeah.
And then, like, with it being so low, you definitely know that you can
I don't
use
think
it and it's going to be
Sindalf's
backed
not
up
being an
late.
ass.
Even
No.
for those who are pretty bad at timelining, such as myself, you don't have to think 7 minutes ahead in the fight. Just think 4 minutes. It's a lot simpler to use. So
Yeah, I think your initial use of your invuln was really good. Like you guys basically free up 2 slots. Yeah, but I think we talked about this the other day, but I feel like after maybe 4 or 5 attempts of you guys doing that, I think you should have not used your invuln anymore. Because then at that point, I think it was a waste. I do think it was good for prog though, because you basically just make it to where you have 2 players that can stand next to the crystal. But I feel like after you saw that, yeah, I feel like you could have stopped using it there.
Yeah, it's the only reason I did it is actually I found this interesting when talking to Xeno the other day about the use of tank invulns, and he kept on mentioning the amount of like healing that healers save. So first of all, I have a fundamental lack of I have no idea how many off GCD or on GCD healers have for tanks at all. I know benediction exists, and I know every other healer has like something like that, but like I just assume throughout a fight that healers are just off GCD healing us, and then they're telling us if they're not. So we asked about the tank busters because like we could just kitchen sink that. I wasn't aware that they were doing any GCD heals on the long string of autos. From that you would gain CDs to use on that if you were not mitigating the busters right and invulning them or having one person invuln them. So and then we were like, "Are you guys using a GCD heal to heal us during the actual buster?" And they're like, "We are right now. Let's try not doing it." And then they stopped. They were just like, they just used a Benny and something else for it. And then they stopped doing it entirely. So like, all right, cool, that's fine. The reason we ever did it in the intermission was never for tank things. I've never thought of a tank invuln as like making my job easier. I'm trying, if I can, to have the invuln be easier for other people. We were wiping in the Shiva icicle phase because we were kind of YOLOing it, but having people just spread out on the opposite side of the room of their icicle. But a lot of people were cleaving each other. So what we did was we put the tank invulns there
No, it was good
just
to use there.
remove
It was good
from 8
for a few
people down to
pulls.
6 people running to the edge of the room.
That's what I
and
think.
having us stand next to our things and point them in a safe spot.
Because
so
the
we are
6
not
out of 8
confusing other
players
people.
get
And it
easier
immediately
practice.
cut down our deaths in that phase.
Mm-hmm.
And I was more interested in doing that than I was worrying about healer GCDs for what was it, the actual busters.
So 2 things with that is like I think the whole I really like having the invuln for filling a gap as you're learning, because nobody likes to see a tank die for one reason or another, because you're learning too as everybody else is. You're gonna mess up. But also it's usually the tank who sees the furthest of new mechanics. They're the ones who are gonna live, and that invuln is gonna let you see a full set of mechanics that everybody else is going to hit the floor for, or they were already dead. And that's pretty important, in my opinion. So I usually don't like using them if I can help it. The other thing is, when you mentioned healing, I feel as if there's actually such a thing as using too many invulns. So there's a lot of people just like, oh, we want to invuln this buster here, or just invuln this one over there. And you look at your
when you could have no heals because you mitigated it, you're at a healthy level, except for hollow ground.
Double, like some of Shiva with double slap is like that, where I'm just like, I could invuln this, especially the first one in the fight, but I usually don't, and I mitigate it.
Dark Knight, you end up mitigating anyways for a lot of things where you would Living Dead or Home Gang, right? But you're like, if I don't Living Dead, you don't have to heal me. I'll just.
It's just different on a Dark Knight, though.
I mean, that is also definitely a very Dark Knight problem to an extent, because I mean, you don't have to heal Home Gang.
You're actively looking at how to not use your kit.
Yeah,
like,
that's a problem. Is when you have to look at Living Dead and okay, how do we not use it here?
Xeno, what do you think? I already know Sindalf just loves Dark Knight and everything about it. What do you think? Now that Home Gang and Living Dead are the same duration, you think they should swap the recast timers on them if they're going to keep them like that? Because now Home Gang doesn't have a drawback, man.
I don't think that. I think they should improve Living Dead.
I think they should improve Living Dead. I don't think Dark Knight's looking very good going into expansion. I'll say that much.
Also, Max, Home Gang has a short cooldown, but it used to have a drawback that you couldn't move once you activated it. You were just stuck until it was over. But they removed that.
Yeah, for some reason over the years, they just kept buffing Home Gang every expansion.
It was already good.
You mean how like Spirits Within always scaled with HP, and then they gave us Upheaval that scaled with HP, and Warriors complained, and they took it away? Max, my chat's saying are you looking over things, and I kind of organized that spreadsheet a little awkwardly because I just did it quickly while we were talking. Do you have a question about it?
Nope, all good.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Home Gang's CD actually used to be 3 minutes, not 4. In some fights, it was even better because it was 3 minutes instead of 4.
I remember. I think it's
oh my
Alexander,
god, that was awesome.
Where like you could Home Gang so much of that fight.
Which fight?
A12S Alexander.
Oh yeah.
Home Gang like 90% of it just because it's like cooldown.
Just because it was up, man.
Yeah, the same thing for Kefka. You remember
oh my god,
Home
I
Gangs
switched to
Kefka?
Dark Knight one week and I almost shit myself because I'm like, I have to tank LB because I didn't account for Living Dead.
Like you can not only Home Gang almost every single Ultimate Embrace. There was like one that you couldn't get or something, but you also had you also had an option like you could like basically it was the last one. You could either Home Gang like the one in the tower or you could Home Gang the one before it or something. It was like Home Gang being at 3 minutes was still really, really fucking good, even though it only lasted 6 seconds.
You know what else?
Feeling that you have now.
I mean, there's a lot of fights like that though, wasn't there? Where you'd have cooldown, or you'd be fucked by a mitigation like Midgard Stormer, where you didn't get to choose if you tanked.
Yeah, it's so like Home Gang. Okay, so what I was saying earlier, man, was like about the negative effect of Living Dead. It's like kind of a shit. Well, okay, it is a shit cooldown, but it's also it makes it worse because of the job that it's on. If like what makes like one part of what makes Home Gang so good is the job that it's on because it has so much healing. So like it's not just Home Gang is like good. It's also has to do with the fact that it's on the right job kind of. So it's just, man, I don't mean to like beat a dead horse, but it's just really unfortunate that Living Dead did not see a fucking, like it just didn't get anything. This is like, it's been like that since Heaven's Ward.
Yeah.
I just feel like, I don't know, man. They could have put Convalescence on it. They could have gave you Life Leech. They could have also made... here's like one really annoying thing about Living Dead is when you cleanse it, the Walking Dead effect falls off. I feel like at least the Walking Dead should
let
remain.
It persist.
Yeah.
Heal it off, and it either turns into a different debuff or it just still gives you the invuln for the entire 10 seconds. That actually is the part of Living Dead I dislike the most, is the times you die. You fucking did this to me. Where you get it healed off at
I'm sorry.
right before the last hit. Yeah, I remember, dude.
My ping's too good, man.
You put me in the fucking ground.
Well, no. I mean, no, you weren't. Okay,
No,
the boss killed you with an auto attack. All right.
No, he didn't.
Wait, he didn't?
No, it was you healed me right before the
Oh, it
last
was a
hit.
fire breath. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
you
Yeah.
fucking owned
Hey,
me.
man, that only happened once, man. You know what? I was trying to double weave. I was trying to hit. You died because of greed, and I'm very sorry. Please forgive me. It is never gonna happen again.
No, it happens. It's fine.
It was greed. I'm sorry. It was because I hit like an arrow, which is an insta-cast ability, and I wanted to double weave benediction and like fucking whatever the spell speed buff is on white mage, whatever that one is.
Also, ignore that first, yeah. Well, the HP remaining tab. I made a boo-boo.
Okay, I want to ask a question though, a legit question
yeah.
about of it since my invuln use on E12 was slandered. If you were never dying to a tank buster, and the amount of if there were any healer GCDs used,
no, he's pissed.
It was not stopping you from a damage thing. You think 2 invulns used on a non-tank mechanic that increased your group success chance on a mechanic and consistency on a mechanic is objectively bad?
No, I'm agreeing with you because we did that on Fatebreaker where there's the part where there's the powder mark buster. Instead of having to move the boss out of all those windows and mirrors and shit, we just had the tank stand on the other side and invuln. I think using it to delete a mechanic isn't bad.
No, I think your guys...
If I could go back and change it, maybe eventually, but you also have to keep in mind that E12 was a little specific in that we were like kind of progressing it, and then we reached a point of being dead.
I linked it earlier. I can link it again,
where we were watching a lot of repeat mistakes happening, and that was I experienced something pretty close to what we call absolute vibe death, and I just stopped thinking about the boss entirely, and I just wasn't giving a fuck. So that's another reason why we kind of never optimized it after that point.
I think I actually think what you guys did was good. Because I think in Prague you use any shitty strat that lets you see the next part of the fight, and then you go back and you only change it if you need to, like, you know, if you fail like a DPS check or something, you know, whatever, you can go back and change it if you absolutely have to. So I actually think that what you guys originally did was fine. The problem was that after, like, you know, 4 or 5 times, you guys would invuln but still kill other people. So the other 6 party members like learned how to do the mechanic, but you guys didn't really learn how to do it. So you would still kill them.
Well,
so
I mean, we learned how to do it. Like I was standing next to my thing and aiming it away. Anytime that my thing hit other people was not because I didn't understand the mechanic. It was because I just messed up, right? It wasn't like I was just like, well, fuck it, I'll just stand under the boss and invuln.
Yeah, I guess like getting consistent.
Yeah, like I'm sure there were times I
Yeah.
killed people, but more almost every time I went right next to my thing and either aimed it directly forward or back where I didn't see a tether.
Yeah. It's also kind of jarring for the people on the other side too, because they might not be able to see you. So they might not. So basically, like they might not know that it's not safe in their like lane, I guess.
I mean, I wasn't putting any of that on them. If anyone got hit by my thing, it wasn't because they were unaware of me. They should have not have to worry about me at all, right? I would I can aim it anywhere in the room if I'm right next to the thing, right? So.
Yeah. Well, I think originally what you guys did was smart. But yeah, like I said, I do think you guys should have stopped using it after like 4 or 5 pulls. But
my only problem is if we would have swapped back, we talked about swapping back. And we were like, okay, let's say we like invuln one thing, so we only have to like just Benny the tank buster, just the one guy who's getting healed every time, and you don't give a fuck about the other guy, kind of thing. Even in that scenario, in my mind, it was not worth ever wiping like 1 or 2 more times ever in the Shiva phase for where we were in progression, than to, than to like be safer on tank busters that were very rare deaths to that. And even if they were not like preventing a clear, because a lot of the times we were still learning the fight. We weren't like fighting the enrage.
Yeah,
I don't know if I would have really done it differently, to be honest with you. If I did not watch him, I'm not sure if he was just like absolute random, like just not giving a fuck hitting people. But I can say for myself, the times that I killed people, I would literally just tell them like, oh, I just killed you, because I would just watch it happen, right? Like that's the only thing I'm focusing on when I'm invulning.
Yeah, yeah, you can heal those busters. I mean, obviously, Yeah, it's just better like healing wise to invuln some of them. But I mean, you guys did it fine. You guys cleared. Like I don't remember if like invulning those ever cost you guys like a pull like later on. I can't honestly remember, but
I think I did a few times, once or twice. My whole thing is that you just don't know. You don't know what's coming next, and if you don't know, then you don't use it there. That's a very poor spot to do that.
It's just a trade-off benefit. If it gets you past it, it gets you past it. But was there a better option? Who knows? Because hindsight's 20/20. And as long as you, I mean, if you were gonna kill this weekly and you recognize that you got to change it after, then that's one thing. But if you're just trying to,
I've never killed anything more than once. That's another thing that vastly changes my perspective to you all, because the only thing I've ever done is progression kill anything. I've never farmed a single boss in this game, so I don't have that. Every ultimate one time, I've killed E10S 3 times actually. Made that up. I've killed for some reason that boss instead of other.
That's like the worst fight, man.
Yeah, but yeah. Or if I've done them, it's like once or something, right? Oh yeah, I did E1 for T-Bis. But yeah, you get the point. All of my mindset is progression and nothing else, because I don't think of anything else.
E10. Stormer.
All right, that's probably about. Does anyone have any other ideas about any stuff you guys want to talk about? I'm kind of chilling.
Gonna play an Endwalker?
Me?
Playing Paladin, man?
I'm probably gonna. I think so, because the 2 classes I play the most right now are Paladin and Dark Knight, and I think Dark Knight sucks huge chopper. So I'm probably gonna play. I mean, I might play a little Reaper. Gonna probably play Paladin / Warrior if I tank. But I'm also probably not gonna play in progression. But I will do a lot of I'll do a lot of like party finder stuff like after progression. I think that's actually something that it would be really fun and really good stream content, would be to do party finder clear with viewers or random people after we're done.
Your party finder's badass because, I mean, just like WoW, right? The fights are going to change week to week. You're going to get more gear, ignore more mechanics, react to them differently. That part is nice. It's like a whole new fight a little bit.
I was really curious.
Yeah, it should be really fun. I think it's also
Dark
just because, like, when I'm doing,
I know he really likes it. I was curious
like
to see what he thought about it.
Like my performance. In fact, I'm actually, in my opinion, I'm a horrifically bad streamer when I do progression stuff, because I just completely ignore my chat. I'm just fully focused on the team and me. But in Party Finder, I like play at like 90% of my capability, and I just talk the whole fucking time, and it's a blast. So it's like a totally different
I'm gonna post it on YouTube
kind of content. I think it's really, really fun. So I will.
The entire VOD today will be up there on.
I'm really looking forward to that,
multiple
actually.
videos.
But also, I'm looking forward to like the bouncing back and forth. Like right now, the time frame might be something like this. Like 9.5 comes out. I don't really give a shit about that. It's insanely good changes, but there's no new content with it. So I'm gonna see, like, I'm gonna get to go hard at the beginning of Endwalker, do a lot of content there. I'm gonna like do the Savage raid, and then 9.2 will come out like a month or 2 after that, and then like Ultimate will come. Like the bouncing between games is like fucking prime time frame right now. However, that is definitely not the case in the future. I think I'm actually a little disappointed, because if I really like this game, and currently I do, it would really suck if these games start having like similar patch release schedules where I have to only play WoW. That would be very unfortunate. So
it's happened in the past.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, allegedly Blizzard does that on purpose all the time, right? So, although, dude, I love hearing takes like that, dude. People take it so far.
Fiscal seasons, right? Like, it just makes sense from a business standpoint to release things at X intervals, and of course they're gonna line up at some point, whatever.
Yeah,
I've had to pee for the past 20 minutes.
Well, so for sure, Blizzard has like made release schedules happen around Final Fantasy. I think the most egregious one, or maybe the only one that I think is actually like 100% true, is the Eternal Palace 8.2 release with Shadowbringers in July of 2019, I think. That was one. But like, people take that shit so far, man. Like, people be like, new PoE season. No wonder WoW put PTR raid testing on this Friday. Yeah, see you there, Blizzard. Like, no fucking shot. That's what they did. And then they'll see like, oh, what's coming out? Fucking Farm Simulator.
You're not including Primal
Weird Blizzard releasing
you actually
a
get
brand
way more
new patch when Farm Simulator 3 comes out. Like,
during an
people
release.
just get actually so they reach so far to like blame Blizzard for something.
You don't get 3 fell cleaves. You get 3 fell cleaves plus a primal
Right.
in
Well,
every minute.
it was a great talk, guys. I'll need to. I mean, I talk with a few of you pretty consistently, but it was really nice speaking with you, Rin. Was a good show. Liked all the perspectives about Endwalker and tanking going forward. So thank you guys. I'm gonna probably head out though. Yeah. So and then again in my stream and everyone else's stream, if any mods want to post the info, if you guys liked what these people were saying, you can check out their streams or Sindalf because he just doesn't have one.
Twitter.
Oh yeah, you can follow his Twitter. He posts
Follow his
banger
Twitter.
tweets.
Definitely follow his Twitter.
Banger
You can
tweets.
check out Foldosaurus Rex as well.
You should also check out Fold.
Yeah, between Fold and Sindalf, it's a good way to get your fill.
Yeah, Primal Rend is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, that's a
it's
good way
like
to
2
put it.
fell cleaves basically.
Yeah. And follow Arthars if you want consistent retweets of anime waifus. That's the one.
Yep.
All right, see you guys later.
Yo, peace, guys. It was
see ya.
fun talking to you.